The government races to rescue 4,000 British nationals as factions in Sudan agree a three-day ceasefire.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 25th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
You're very welcome. Leading the news this morning, the two sides in Sudan's civil war have agreed a 72-hour ceasefire as the government moves to evacuate British nationals. Royal Navy ships are on their way to Port Sudan, which is safer than the capital, Khartoum.
It comes amid growing criticism that the UK hasn't acted fast enough on rescuing those stranded by fighting, as it's revealed the ambassador to Sudan was on holiday when the violence broke out.
The Prime Minister's pledged his support for a campaign to protect women's rights, launched by Labour and Conservative MPs. Writing in the Express, the father of two daughters vowed to protect single-sex spaces.
Low-income households are starting to receive the latest cost of living payment from the government amid continued high inflation. 8 million people, including those on universal credit, should receive £301 from today.
And the latest hearing in Prince Harry's battle with the press takes place today. The Duke of Sussex is suing Rupert Murdoch's News Group newspapers over allegations of phone hacking. And if you've been hacked and you want to talk about it, or maybe...
You've been hacked?
I'm not allowed to say.
Oh.
Right, so you can get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email gbviews@gbnews.uk and let us know where you're watching or listening to us from, or indeed who's listening to you. So the top story this morning, the government's mobilising the military and Royal Navy as they race to rescue 4,000 British nationals who are trapped in Sudan.
Foreign Office Minister Andrew Mitchell said they were considering every option and rejected comparisons to the evacuation of Afghanistan.
The position in Sudan is completely different. First of all, in Afghanistan, there were troops on the ground, British troops on the ground. There are not British troops on the ground in Khartoum and Sudan. In Afghanistan, the airport was open and working. The airport in Khartoum is out of action entirely. And thirdly, there was in Afghanistan a permissive environment, and so we had the permission of the Taliban to take people out. There is no such permissive environment at all in Sudan and in the capital city.
Now, all of this comes as the US Secretary of State announces a 72-hour ceasefire between the two factions in the country.
Well, let's speak to the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Always good to talk to you, Robert. Incredibly serious situation in Sudan. All hopes now pinned on this ceasefire, but extraordinarily difficult given there is no possibility of airlifts. All of the British citizens have to get to some port if they can, preferably Port Sudan.
There is just a possibility, but as you're suggesting, the airfields available are very small, can take only one or two aircraft at a time. I don't think we can say never on that. The Dutch got 3 flights away yesterday, and the Dutch have been very helpful for the British. 2 problems. One is the ceasefire going to hold? They haven't held up to now. And the second is locating the British people and their dependents and their families where they are all over Khartoum. It is very, very difficult, particularly as the internet and communication facilities have been pretty dodgy, not to say going down over the last 24 hours.
Yeah. Robert, there's talk of this British Expeditionary Force in Port Sudan. And there's all this talk, and the press are adapting this language, that the army are there to scope out the region. Well, what does the term scope mean?
Yeah, I wish they used clearer language. Gosh, briefings are fairly tortuous, particularly for the poor old English language. What they mean is that they have to get undercover people, or not so undercover people, but people probably in disguise, just going through the streets just to find British people, presumably, and it must be so that the consular services and the British Embassy will have a record of some of these people, of where they reside. They're supposed to have registered, but we've heard on British media from the bereft in Khartoum that it's been very difficult to sign up at times. It's incredibly complex. It's complex in a way that the rescue from Kabul 2 years ago, despite what Andrew Mitchell said, was very complicated. The fact is, we're not comparing apples and oranges or whatever here, and I think that it's quite wrong to say that, but these rescues are very difficult, and what we're learning with the fragility of so many of these countries now, particularly in the region around Sudan, we're going to have to think of mounting these things quite frequently. Ships, as you say, are on their way. One of them may well be arriving already at Port Sudan. But the response really has been not amongst the swiftest, could I say, of the principal allies of Britain amongst NATO and the North American countries. The Canadians have been very good.
Yeah, well, I suppose part of the challenge is if you evacuate your consular team before citizens, then there is going to be this time lag, isn't there, before you can get on with evacuating people because you haven't got that capability. And also, I suppose one of the big challenges in all of this is there are a lot of people who happen to be in the country visiting. For example, we're hearing reports of 71 NHS doctors there who we need to get back, but it's very hard for the consulate for the embassy to know exactly where they are. And indeed, we're going to be speaking in a moment to a mother who had gone to visit family, so not actually a resident, but British passport holders in the country.
This is extremely complicated, but they have to focus, and it's a very big area, on Khartoum first, which is not to say that there are people who are in distress or who would like to be rescued elsewhere in the country, in a very large country it is indeed too. It's the third largest in Africa. But we've heard, oh dear, shades of Afghanistan. Not that the ambassador was away there. He was very good and he was very much on the ground. But the ambassador is on holiday. And part of the problem is that the ambassador also covers Egypt and is generally resident in Egypt. The spaces are enormous. And even this minimal obligation of Britain's security forces and consular forces to look after British citizens looks like it's getting much, much more difficult, particularly as these ministries, the Foreign and Development Office, as it now is, the Foreign Office in old money, is really pretty pushed budget-wise as well.
Robert, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your analysis of the situation. Much appreciated. We're now going to hear the story of someone who's directly affected by all of this, Sarah El Khalifa, whose mother is there stranded in Sudan. Sarah speaks to us from Bournemouth this morning. Sarah, sorry for this whole situation. How worried are you for your mother?
I am just absolutely terrified. I'm worried for my mum. My mum's me sister, who's she with, her two nieces, my cousins, and my granddad, because it's every time I contact them, the situation just gets worse and worse and worse, and I have to keep travelling around the country in order to just find refuge and to find safety.
And tell us a little bit about that process, because I know you've lost contact with your mother since the weekend, but before that, she'd moved to one particular area where the prisons had been opened and rapists and murderers were walking through the streets. I mean, a terrifying situation.
Yeah, so she moved to a place which is just a bit south of Khartoum. She moved, what was it, I think Wednesday last week, to a place called Madani, and we thought that she was going to be absolutely safe, completely fine when she was there. And what happened to her is, because she had a location on, it was pinged off her phone, and then the house next door got bombed and attacked, and because it got picked up. And then in Madani itself, the opposing force against the military, they decided to release 10,000 prisoners, and these prisoners are on death row, and these are some of the worst humans you could that in the world. They're rapists, child molesters, the baddest apples of the bunch, and you're leaving. And the government's advice was saying just stay inside. She has to stay inside, because if she goes out, she doesn't have a risk anymore of just being shot and killed immediately. She has a risk of being tortured, of, God forbid, the worst thing happening. And it's just trying to get her to travel somewhere safer is just, and having no contact with her, it's awful.
Yeah, and I mean, as you say, your mum, her relatives caught in the middle of all of this. And
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to tell me which side they're on, but does it matter to them who gains superiority in this? Do you have to be on one side or the other?
I mean, it doesn't matter if you're on one side or not, because the two sides are just going to kill each other and kill Sudan. It doesn't really matter who wins at this point. They're going to have nothing to win. The winner gets rubble and dead bodies.
Yeah.
And what do you make of the British government's handling of all of this? There's been some criticism of evacuating diplomats and their families before citizens. Do you feel your mum's been abandoned?
100%. Because you were able to get out, between America and the UK, they were able to get out, 100 diplomats onto one plane, and then they're arguing, oh, it was too hard, we couldn't do it, we couldn't get enough people on. You were very easily and successfully able to get out the diplomats. Why can't you get out the citizens? Like, these are people that they're mothers, they're hard workers, they're people in the UK. Like, my younger brother and sister, they depend on my mother to come back and help them. They're struggling. I think it's absolutely awful what they're doing with government. They need to hopefully get them all out, get as many people out, not just British nationals, just help the people in Sudan.
So, Sarah, would you ever see a day, would you dare go back?
I personally haven't been to Sudan since I was 15, so nearly 6 years now. And even then, it wasn't that safe. My brother and sister that recently just went there. We even, because it wasn't even that safe when they went, we would say, you're not allowed to even go to the shops by yourself. You're not allowed to go to anywhere by yourself without a native Sudanese person there. I can't see myself going back probably for another decade, realistically.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're at Durham University now. You've had to come home to look after your siblings in the absence of your mum. We really hope you get news of her. We're hoping that the fact that you haven't heard from her means that she's on one of these ships and on her way to safety. Keep us posted. Let us know how your mum gets on, won't you?
Yes, I will. Thank you so much. There's also a petition going around to bring her back to the UK, so please sign.
Absolutely.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Sarah's a student, and she's the daughter of a stranded mother out there whose story that you've just heard. 12 minutes past 6 o'clock on this Tuesday morning, the Prime Minister's pledged his support for a campaign to protect women's rights launched by MPs Miriam Cates and Rosie Duffield.
Yes, writing in the Express newspaper today, he vowed to protect single-sex spaces, adding that the issue's personal to him as a father of 2 daughters.
Now, it comes as today marks 6 months since Rishi Sunak took office. Let's now get the opinion of former advisor to Boris Johnson, and that's Rory Gagan, who joins us in the studio this morning. Rory, you've seen the article in the Express. How does this define, why is this important for Rishi Sunak? I mean, he says it's important because he's got 2 daughters, but 6 months into his premiership, how does this define him?
Yeah, well, I think it is important to recognise he is a father of 2 daughters. So that will always be, I think, and he's always been very consistent and clear on that being important to him. I think also in the wake of obviously horrendous events such as, obviously the murder of Sarah Everard, I think there's a real sort of need politically and also just in terms of actual delivery for the public of getting a grip on violence against women and girls in particular. And obviously we've seen in Scotland with the Scottish National Party and the hot water they got into around the sort of Isle of Bryson and the sort of question of sort of rapists in women's prisons. Slightly mad, of course, that we even end up in that space. Yeah. But again, reassuring, really, that he's clear.
Rory, is this not just all panic? I mean, I'm only playing devil's advocate with you here, and I'm thinking, right? So, is every woman in the land who goes to a gym, for instance, or schoolgirl at school or whatever, are they worried that someone in their confine, in their dressing room, in their changing area, is sitting there with a penis? And if so, what are they going to do with that penis?
Well, I think they shouldn't have to worry about that. And I think that's one of the key arguments for...
But is it really a threat?
Spaces. I think we've seen that there are indeed, sadly, a small number, but a number nonetheless of people who are prepared to deceive, prepared to feign all sorts of things in order to exploit people, in order to sexually molest people, in order to prey on people. And I think it's quite right, therefore, that we are very clear today that, you know, the government, it sounds like from what Rishi's written, that he's going to be very supportive of ensuring that those women's spaces...
I just wanted to get from people who are watching and listening at home, how big a threat in your day-to-day life is this idea that your space, your toilet space, your changing room space, whether it's in a department store or whether it's in a gymnasium or whatever, could be violated by someone... I don't really know how, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested... I think it's very... clever of Rishi Sunak to pick up on this campaign of the Maria Kate and Rosie Duffield, because it's kind of a hit back at the sort of hate ads that the Labour Party have been putting out about his weakness with perpetrators. Because he's making quite clear in that article in The Express, isn't he, what his stance is on all of those issues.
Right.
And getting on board with the Labour MP as well.
Right. And so I think the fact that this is backed by two MPs from two different parties, and at a time where other parties, you know, up north in Scotland, we've got the SNP in a muddle. Down here, as we've seen more recently, Labour struggling themselves to kind of articulate a position, you know, 99.9% and all that around the biology. So I think it is smart. I also think it's sincere with his two daughters, and certainly having spent some time recently on the road, as I do, going around the country, I've certainly met more than a few people who've approached me and made the point themselves that they are worried for their kids. So it will be interesting, I think, to see what your viewers have.
Also, on the economy, can we just play a clip, first of all, of Rishi Sunak sort of outlining what his views were and whether we think he's achieving that after his first 6 months? Let's have a listen.
And the heart of that mandate is our manifesto. I will deliver on its promise. A stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders, protecting our environment, supporting our armed forces, levelling up and building an economy that embraces the opportunities of Brexit, where businesses invest, innovate and create jobs.
And has he achieved that, do you think?
I think we're still a long way, sadly, from where we need to be. And, of course, some of this stuff is outside of, obviously, government's control. Government loves to think that it can somehow control everything. And, of course, you know, what Putin does, the effect on sort of gas prices and so on, is all largely outside of government's control, particularly in the short term. I think, you know, at the end of the day, the cost of living is still here. You know, inflation might be softening and we're constantly being told that it's a short-term piece, but it doesn't feel like that for a lot of people. And again, like in my capacity on the Public Safety Foundation, I hear a lot from people who are concerned about acquisitive crime rising, they're having their property stolen, and certainly I think a lot of shops are experiencing the increase in shop theft. So I think there's still a way to go. And I think also with the economy stuff, it's kind of, you know, we need economic growth, but at the same time we've got inflation. We're in this sort of strange position of trying to sort of offset the two. And the risk is, of course, we sort of don't hit either. OK. Rory Gagan, thank you so much. Former Special Advisor to Boris Johnson. Appreciate your time.
So the headline at the front of the Express is a pledge from our Prime Minister to hearten Britain's women, and it's about respect for women in the school curriculum, and which is something we're going to talk about later on in the programme. And Isabel, do you feel that women get a bad deal in terms of respect, how they're... You do? You do.
I mean, yeah, obviously, I think that, yeah. I mean, it's an ongoing battle every day. But I do think, you know, you're talking about women-only safe spaces. I think it's incredibly important for women to have places where they can feel safe. You just have to look back through history at how women are very often persecuted. So you have to protect that space and we have to learn the lessons.
See, what I think the problem is, if you get people, say like myself, I would believe that I respect women and I understand women and I don't see any difference and all that sort of thing. That people like me are the danger, because you think, well, there's no problem, there's no issue. And yet you're telling me that there are areas where you feel very vulnerable or more vulnerable in that area than I would.
Yeah, absolutely. Women are murdered disproportionately more than men. Women are killed every week in domestic violence situations. You know, we have to protect women's spaces.
So in what situations would you be frightened? Like walking at night, you wouldn't want to be on your own?
Yeah, I'm jumpy anyway. I mean, you know, being in the public eye, you only have to think of Jill Dando and whatever else. I'm naturally a cautious person, but, you know, I think of my daughter and, you know, already she's 3. We've already had a flashing incident where a man came up and was, you know, had to call the police, and that was just in our local area. So, you know, it starts from very early on. It happened to me several times in my childhood, was flashed many times.
See, the trouble is,
at least 3 times.
Trouble is calling the police. You should just deal with them deal with them beforehand with a baseball bat or something
Well, I
like
was
that.
with my 3-year-old daughter, so
I'd
there's
still
nothing
deal
I
with
could
them with
do.
a baseball
I was
bat.
trying to get away from him as quickly as possible. We were in a dark alleyway. So, I mean,
Dear
3 in the
God,
afternoon.
That's horrendous.
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the afternoon.
police came straight
Why
away.
didn't you just phone me?
Well, I was shocked. I was in
Horrendous.
shock. Yeah, I was in shock.
Absolutely horrendous. I was stopped by the police again today. You know, I was hauled
Today?
by the police this morning. Yes. So what is
Were you
is it about
speeding
me?
again?
No. They quite politely in an unmarked car.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Gosh, that scares me.
pulled
That
me into
scares
the
me. You
side.
asked me what scares me. Unmarked cars. I mean,
would've-
Sarah Everard, he was in a marked car, but I wouldn't like to be stopped at
Well,
night
they
by a
had blue
police car.
flashing lights.
Still.
Although when I was 18, I had a car that had a blue flashing light as well, which wasn't supposed
sake.
to. Because I thought Kojak had a blue flashing light. He was able to put a magnetic light on his roof like that.
Oh, right.
So
you wanted one?
Yeah. So I got. I mean, they were illegal.
Yeah, but
I
then
had
it was
one.
Belfast in the 70s or whatever it was. You could do that.
There were worse things you could be doing.
Exactly.
But anyway, so the police hauled me in again today.
Right, what were you doing?
Nothing. Going to work.
So what was the problem?
They were children. They were children. They were children. Do you know when
you've
you
got
look
to
and you
respect
say,
them, yeah,
I
they're
know.
out there
Listen, I
working.
do respect them. I think this is great because I think there's no chance of cars being stolen in our area if they're there on the prowl.
Yeah. So was it in your local area?
It was.
Well, that's good then.
It
Yeah,
was
they
a few hundred
they probably
yards from
thought you were a
home.
drug dealer or something in a flashy, blacked out.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
That's why I never get stopped.
Yes. And if you'd have been there, they would have thought you were my mall.
Yeah. Oh, God, I don't even know what that is, but
A mall.
I don't need to know.
M-O-L-L.
Right, okay. Let's move on.
You'd make a good mall. So you
Would
would.
I? I know for sure
Time
I
at
would.
21 minutes past 6. The latest news stories shape up like this.
More than 8 million households are to start receiving £301 cost of living support payments from the government today. It's the first of 3 payments, totalling up to £900 for those eligible on benefits such as universal credit or pension credit. The government's launching
No,
legal
put
action
them on
against
the
the Royal
table
College
there.
of Nursing in an attempt to declare a planned strike in May unlawful. RCN members in England are planning a 48-hour walkout from 8 p.m. On the start of the night shift on April the 30th in a long-running dispute over pay.
Over 17 million trips could be made over this bank holiday weekend. There are 2 bank holidays in a row over the next 2 weekends. The Royal Automobile Club have warned road congestion expected to be worse than for the next weekend would be the coronation. So Prince Harry's at it again, right? So he's bringing the press to court, a new battle taking place today. He's suing the publishers of The Sun over allegations of phone hacking.
Yeah, well, here to tell us more is the journalist and broadcaster Sally Jones. Good morning to you. What is the complaint in this case, Sally? Good morning.
I'm so sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
My question was, what is his complaint in this particular case?
Well, his complaint is that, and it's the same similar complaint that he's had against several tabloid newspapers, but that over a period of time, that he alleges that not just the News of the World, the Sunday paper, but the Sun, over a period of time, managed to obtain illegal information through phone hacking, through private investigators, through various different ways, but particularly phone hacking, to try to find out his innermost secrets. And while he's longing to get the people who were the head honchos at the Sun, particularly people like Rebecca Brooks, back into court, and he really wants to give the Sun a good kicking if he can possibly stand this up, because he's complaining that dreadful stories about him were published at the time, very lurid sort of things which he's convinced could only have been obtained through phone hacking. Things like, Harry's night of lust and all the things about his relationships with his then girlfriends at the start of in the last 20 years or so, people like Chelsea Davy, who was his quite long-standing girlfriend. And I think he's also going to be claiming that it really affected both his relationships and the rest of his family as well. in the High Court.
Sally, let me ask you for advice on this, advice on his behalf. If you were an agony aunt, what would you be saying to him? It is a long time ago. I understand his hurt. I understand his sense of outrage and all of this. But, you know, it was the Queen's mantra, don't complain, never explain. And yet he's entering into this again. Is this really going to do him any good? Will this put an end to attacks against him?
I don't think it will. I think the problem is that usually the royal family have taken the moral high ground. They haven't got involved in litigation. They haven't mostly sued because, for one thing, there may well be dreadful things coming out in court. They may have to give evidence, or he may well have to give evidence if this goes from a preliminary hearing actually to a proper court case. And the sad thing is that I just don't think it's going to make things any better. Harry has already made himself pretty unpopular with, as a lot of people see it, throwing his family under a bus. It looks as though he is still perhaps trying to keep his links with England, even though Meghan and he have pretty much upped sticks and seem to be basing their life entirely in California. And it seems to be as though he wants to still keep those links. He also wants to draw attention to the tabloids, and particularly The Sun, that he really loathes. And it looks as though he wants his day in court. And I think it's a sad thing because, for one thing, it won't win him any more friends. I think he wants to draw attention to what he sees as wrongdoing by the tabloids. But I think it's also going to be a terrible distraction from what ought to be a joyous occasion, you know, the King's coronation, just 10 days beforehand. He's then got more cases coming up, a preliminary hearing against the Mirror in May. So it really, I would say to him, let it go, try to make your life, be happy. I just think it's a sad thing. And even if he gets damages, even if he manages to see off The Sun as he hopes to do, along with the actor Hugh Grant, I don't think it's going to make him happier.
Well, he turned up at the last court hearing, didn't he, unexpectedly? There's every chance he might do the same again today. It clearly means a lot to him to be flying across the world, given his views on climate as well, to be doing that probably in a private jet and whizzing back again and then back for the coronation.
I think he's also trying partly to keep himself in the public eye because he knows that part of his value on the American market is to be seen in public linked to the royal family. I think that may be one reason that he's going to come, however briefly, for the coronation. He obviously also wants to draw attention to as he sees it, the wrongdoing of The Sun. But I think quite a bit of this is keeping himself aligned with the royal family because that's where so much of his value, so much of his income derives from. But really, at rock bottom, there's this absolute burning resentment against the media in general that he still sees as mainly responsible for his mother's death, even though both he and his mother seem to be only too happy also to exploit the media for their own uses. So it's quite an ambivalent relationship and slightly a feeling of wanting to run with the hare and hunt with the hounds.
Yeah.
You know,
indeed.
He's only too pleased to use the tabloids when he wants to publicise his memoir Spare or, you know, to get the kind of profile that allows him to rake in millions in America.
Sally Jones, we have to leave it there.
If there were any phone hacking, a lot of it seems to be almost messing with people's souls. I mean, nobody, particularly someone young and vulnerable, should have to go through that.
OK, Sally Jones, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Sally. Thank you very much indeed. Your views, all very welcome. Please stay with us. We'll have the latest on reports that Joe Biden could announce his bid for the 2024 presidency today, if he remembers, after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just after 6:30, let's look at what's still to come on our little show over the 19 hours that it's on today. At 7:20, as restaurant chain, what are they called?
Oaxaca.
Oaxaca. What do they do?
Oh, it's so good.
Oaxaca.
They do such good Mexican and meat food. And guess what? They've stopped offering steak because they're trying to cut carbon emissions. So we're going to be debating if the rise of meat-free menus
So
is
me
a good
not
thing.
Oaxacan meat. It sounds like I'm clearing my throat.
No, that's not how you say it, though.
So I'm saving the planet by not getting meat. So what I get is sort of vegetable Oaxaca.
I think, they're a business. They obviously think that this is what their people want.
Okay.
We'll be debating it.
All right, fair enough. 7:45, after a runner popped the question to his girlfriend on the finish line. Right, you've just done 26.2 miles. You haven't got a breath in your whole body. And he gets down on one knee and says, will you marry me? Wouldn't it have been brilliant if she'd have said no?
Well, maybe he went for it while she was weak and
Yes.
he knew she would have to say
She
yes.
looks very weak there, doesn't she? Look, she's
I think it's
hanging on.
wonderful. Lovely news. Very happy to see people in love and on that marriage journey. I'm such a hopeless romantic.
No, I find it much funnier if somebody was to say no. Do you know these public shows of, what are they called?
Yeah, but you proposed via text message, so you're clearly not into big displays of...
All right, you do me down. Yeah, you do me down.
It was
you,
a love
you
letter.
Belittle. No,
It was a love
yes, you
letter.
belittle my arrangement.
I'm just saying, you're not into the big showy proposal.
You were lucky to be asked at all.
I know, I
suppose that's
was
the
lucky.
thing. Yes, grateful.
Twice I've been asked.
Funny, Ruth was very grateful too. Twice you were asked. What?
No, let's not go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, not by the same person.
It doesn't surprise me you were asked twice.
There you go.
Really. But anyway, so we have, you actually have planners, people who organise proposals.
I'd love that job.
To do that job.
Oh, I just get so excited about it. And I also quite enjoy seeing all the stress of the proposer.
Oh no, I
think it's quite funny.
I honestly, literally would wet my pants watching somebody say no. Will you marry me, darling? No.
Oh,
No.
but that's just
Oh,
mean.
so
You're
funny.
so mean.
That's so funny.
It's not about fun, it's about love.
It's like all these kids that open their exams on
social media,
but on TV and whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see what Jilly got in her exams. Oh, A star, A star, A star. Wouldn't it be great if she failed them all? Wouldn't it? It would be hilarious.
Let people be happy. Get in touch, all the usual ways. Let us know your views. Maybe tell us your proposal stories. How did you get engaged? Were you showy? Did you go for the big, elaborate proposal, or was it a private, quiet, intimate affair? Let us know.
GB News at gbnews.uk. You can tweet at GB News. so everybody's saying that Joe Biden will announce today his 2024 re-election campaign, possibly setting the stage for a rematch with Donald Trump all over again.
Well, let's get the latest from someone who's worked on both sides of the US political divide, former advisor to the Clinton and the Bush administration, Steve Gill. Good morning to you. Look, we've seen lots of hints, heavy hints from President Biden that he's going to run again. Is that a good decision, do you think, for the Democrats?
I think that at this stage, if he announces and they support him, that should be called elder abuse. Although if he can mumble and bumble through his announcement, it'll be a major accomplishment. Polls show that most of the folks, even in his party, think he's too old to run. He'll be 82 if he gets reelected again. But by the same token, Donald Trump is not far behind him. The difference is the energy level, the cognitive level that these two men have. But it's interesting, some of the polling that people are looking at, elder Americans, are kind of split on the issue as well. Some people in their 80s are saying, oh, it's way too old, it takes too much energy. Others, say, no, we're all fit and fine at that age. So it all depends on kind of people's personal perspective on whether he's too old to be president again.
Do you think, Steve, that there should be an upper age limit set as to when you could actually enter the presidential race?
I think it really is up to the people to look at the track record and again, the cognitive abilities, the health and fitness level of individuals in any job, frankly. Telling people they've got to leave a job simply because they're 65 or 75, or in this case, in a presidency. If people would get the straight scoop on his condition, and I think more importantly, is his condition affecting the way we withdrew from Afghanistan, the way we're getting out of Sudan? Y'all dealt with that earlier with the British perspective. And then, on energy policy. I mean, I think his policies are a bigger issue, frankly, than his age.
And whereas it's a different problem for Trump, he keeps finding himself back in court, Manhattan today. Bring us up to speed on this. This isn't to be confused with the porn star hush money. This is all in relation to rape allegations.
Yeah, if there's a case that's even sketchier than the bookkeeping case that in criminal court in New York, it's this one. A woman claims that nearly 30 years ago, Donald Trump met her at random at Bergdorf store, convinced her to go into the lingerie section to let her try on lingerie for him to see. And in a dressing room, she claims that he raped her. She pursued this case for the first time in 2019 when she coincidentally had a book tour she was on. She included it in the book, had never made the claim publicly before then. It was statute of limitations. Just sued, claiming he defamed her when he denied the rape allegations, didn't even pursue a rape claim at that point. And then in 2022, the state of New York passed a one-year bill that allows for old rape cases to be brought for a one-year period. She brought that and another defamation case against him. That's the one that's going into civil court, which means that a jury only has to find more likely than not beyond a reasonable doubt like you do in a criminal case. This one just has to kind of get past the 50-yard line to prevail. And there are some concerns that some of her testimony does not make sense. She claims nobody has funded her case. It turns out that Reid Hoffman, a Democrat billionaire who hates Trump, is helping fund her case. And she's also claiming she still has the dress that she was wearing that day. At one point, she was wanting to get DNA evidence from President Trump to prove that it was on the dress. Shades of President Bill Clinton and Lewinsky, who keeps a dress for nearly 30 years when she's never made the claim.
Goodness me. Who knows even if DNA would last that long? I suspect not, but I'm no expert. I just want to ask you, before we let you go, about Tucker Carlson. People at home who may not know who he is, huge Fox News anchor, regularly pulling in 3.3 million viewers of an evening. He has spectacularly walked away or been pushed, I'm not quite sure, from Fox News. Any link, perhaps, to this Dominion settlement that Rupert Murdoch had to pay out tens of millions for?
I think the bigger link is that you've had Fox News move to the left in the last several years after some of the leadership moved on. They have not been embracing the more conservative viewpoint. They've become virulently anti-Trump, and those that are kind of moving up the ladder at Fox are in that category. Interesting that with Tucker Carlson's departure, Fox News lost about 5% of market share, so it cost them nearly $1 billion value. He'll be fine. He'll make his own way, and he'll be kind of like Bill O'Reilly, another former Fox personality who's now making a lot more money working with a podcast and with other media outlets rather than Fox.
Okay, Steve, really appreciate your take on things. Steve's a former advisor, presidential advisor. Thank you very much indeed, Steve. Please do stay with us. The time is coming up to 20 minutes to 7 o'clock.
We'll be discussing Rishi Sunak's pledge to preserve the rights of women when going through the papers with Norman Baker and Emily Carver next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Let's bring you the front pages of the newspapers on this Tuesday morning. Here's how they stack up, beginning with The Times.
It's leading on the race against time to rescue passport holders left stranded in Sudan.
Mirror says amongst the approximately 4,000 British nationals, there are 71 NHS doctors trapped in Sudan.
The Express is focusing on Rishi Sunak's pledge to protect and preserve women's rights across the country.
And a 10 for Len. The Sun pays tribute to Strictly Judge Len Goodman. A lot of tributes in most of the papers today. He died at the age of 78, an absolute gentleman to
He
know.
looked really great, didn't he, at 78?
Oh, he was fit, he was well. I spent a day with him a few years ago and I was just amazed. He played golf constantly and he was very fit and he danced and whatever and he was very, very particularly dressed well. He smelt well, he looked
danced
well. Yeah,
and he had a way with words on Strictly, and he was just really likeable always as a viewer.
Yeah.
You're in the paper with him this morning, aren't you? Pictured somewhere. But yeah, he was what you expect. So often people on TV aren't who you think, but he was what you see is what you get.
He had time for everybody. I mean, he was so popular. People were coming up to get pictures with me, and I said, "Have one with Len as well." No, I didn't. No, everybody wanted a picture with him.
You're actually matching the pair of you.
We look a bit like that, don't we? But
That's
a place called Johnny Joe's. It's an Irish pub in Cushendall in the Glens of Antrim, and we had a great day. And he had time for everybody. Lovely, lovely man. Very nice, very nice.
Oh, it's very sad.
Sudan. I'd just like to ask people about Sudan. Sudan. Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. Here's a serious question. Why would anybody be in Sudan if you weren't born there or lived there? Why would you go...
Well, there's lots of jobs out there.
Well, why have all the jobs around the world, what I'd be saying to myself, must go to Sudan What all this business?
Well, infrastructure, but I mean, business people see opportunities in African countries all over the world. My grandparents lived in Sudan for many years, and my grandfather was an engineer.
So they were colonialists, were they?
Well, let's not go down that road. In those days, if you were white and you were in East Africa, yes, probably. But
I would say, why are there 71 NHS doctors? There's either 71 doctors. Are they still working for the NHS? What are they doing there? And why
I think
are the
there's
NHS...
often conferences all over the world. Who knows if it was a medical conference?
I just asked the question. I'd say to myself, of all the places I know, Sudan for war, for famine, for awfulness, for horribleness. And you just wonder what is it that attracts other people there. However, we've got a mess, terrible mess in that country. Danny says if people go to Sudan, it's their own choice. Why isn't our government responsible for bringing them home when something kicks off? People must be responsible for themselves. We go to Norman Baker on this one. Norman's with Emily Carver as well, reviewing the papers this morning. So this is a big operation, Norman, underway now.
Well, not as big as it should be, it seems, actually, because one of the problems I think we have is that the British government, justifiably perhaps, says it's difficult to rescue 4,000 people who are UK passport holders who are all over the place and they don't know where they all are and the infrastructure's terrible and there's fighting going on in every street, which all sounds very legitimate. But the fact is that the French and the Germans appear to have airlifted hundreds, literally hundreds of people out, their own citizens out of Sudan.
Including British,
including British,
Well, the defence I've heard of that, Norman, is that because there are disproportionately more British people there, it's not comparing like with like. I think that other European nations have far fewer citizens in the country, so the operation is much on a different scale in terms of helping British people.
Well, there may be more British people there, I don't know, but what I do know is that if the French and Germans have taken hundreds out, hundreds is the word used in The Guardian this morning, then we have taken, I think, 33 or thereabouts who are embassy staff. So we don't seem to have taken out as many, even if we have more to take out, than other countries do. So just worrying, really. But I just find that the whole selfishness of these two generals who are prepared to destroy their own country, kill them in no way, pay no attention to civilians or foreign people in the country, just in order to gain control in some sort of feud between the two of them. It's outrageous.
It's also worth noting that our foreign aid budget has gone towards a peace programme in the country, which clearly hasn't had the impact intended if this is all kicking off.
Well, it is really scary. I mean, 400 people have died, including one UN worker, and I believe yesterday a French Special Forces soldier was injured in the evacuation efforts and is gravely ill. So there are genuine, serious concerns for all of those people who are in there, including lots of British people. But what about the ambassador being on holiday?
Oh, I mean, everybody's entitled to holiday. I think
agree.
it's really unfortunate
but there should be intelligence to suggest that things are escalating, and you certainly would return, would you not, in those circumstances?
I'm not sure he
It just has echoes of Dominic Raab being on a sun lounger during the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Yes, well, it does in a way. But, I mean, I think, to be fair to the ambassador, as I understand it, he's been away from his wife for several months. You don't get very often home on these postings. They're booked in advance sometime. And sometimes things can blow up in foreign affairs without very much notice. So maybe we should have been better informed as a country as to what was happening. I can't say we should have been, but perhaps that would have been helpful. But he can't get back. I understand he can't actually get back. And his deputy's there, so I'm not prepared to have a go at him for that.
OK, let's move on now to The Express. Front page of The Express, Emily, and big headline blasting out here. And it says, a pledge from RPM to hearten Britain's women.
Yes. He is pledging his unwavering commitment to preserve the rights and dignity of women across Britain. Now, this is something that he's trying to, this is one of those political issues that he can look better than Keir Starmer, his counterpart, on, because Keir Starmer has wavered about what it means to be a woman. He says he knows what a woman is, Rishi Sunak is saying. He says he wants to protect girls and women, particularly as he has daughters. He talks about that, about the importance of safer streets, but also, crucially, the importance of women-only spaces based on sex only. He said he pledges his support to Miriam Cates and Rosie Duffield MP. They were the two women who've been at the front of this campaign to ensure that women retain their single-sex spaces, refuges, rape crisis centres, etc., also prisons, schools, and so on. He's also talking about things like street lighting and CCTV. He also mentions in this letter in The Express that he wants to create a fairer society where women and girls are given the opportunity to study what they want, take up the careers in what they want, and go as far as their talents will take them. I'm sitting here in 2023 as a woman and thinking, we already have those rights. So I think, girls are able to study what they want. They are able to do what they like in this country. We have a free country and women are able to take opportunities.
Well, you say that, but I mean, just this week we've had this scandal within the CBI. And, there are huge problems about their attitude towards women, and that was right at the top of the business industry. And I really do think that he's right to put his weight behind this, trying to protect and support women, when you've got this kind of culture of toxicity still in prevalent institutions in the UK.
That is true. The CBI has been under the spotlight for that. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the CBI.
Well, a lot
of this.
Organisations are turning away from it, and you can understand why. It's, poison.
Absolutely. But, of course, Rishi Sunak, this could be a win for him, because Keir Starmer has been stumbling over this issue of women's rights for a long time. So, yes, he's saying it's personal to him.
I asked Isabel this earlier, and I want to ask you, when you go into a changing room in a department store or when you go to a gym and you change and whatever, are you worried? He says he's got 2 daughters. Now, does this assume that anybody who is trans is sitting there with a whim to abuse or rape women in a dressing room, or is it just to stop anybody that may get through the system and, is this... I don't know what
It's not really about all trans women being a threat to biological women. It's more that women have an instinct of fear about male bodies. So, for example, at the gym I go to, there is a changing area with lockers that is gender neutral. It's for men and women. And it can be uncomfortable. If you're the only woman in there, a man comes in, it just because you know that, a man is stronger. You don't always know their intentions.
Actually,
it sounds cruel, and I'm sure they've got doing nothing wrong, but it's just that instinct women have.
I'm not, now, Norman, I am completely aghast at this, that there would be in a gymnasium an area for men and women to change, because my experience of gyms and men there are men with towels, and they put them on their back and they put them between their legs and they stand there. But don't talk about what I do. I'm just talking about other people,
Got official image now.
But there are men who show off in their nakedness, and probably women who show off their nakedness. But I cannot understand, why would you want to be sharing an area of changing with men?
Who creates that? I mean, there should be separate areas, and I think absolutely safe spaces for women is absolutely essential. I speak as a former minister who dealt with violence against women and children as the horrible curse in our society. But I have to say about the Prime Minister, well, while I've agreed with what he said this morning, as reported in the papers, the fact is that he's also facing criticism from Theresa May, from Ian Duncan Smith and others, because of the policy on migration, where he's not taking account of women who arrive in this country who've been subject to sexual violence and sexual threats.
All talk. This is all talk, all show.
Some of it's all talk. I mean, I've no doubt that he will actually do something on safe spaces, which I agree with, but he can't then be hypocritical and do nothing about women who arrive here who've been tortured and subject to sexual abuse.
Emily?
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch.
Not really. I mean, it's a question of whether you respect women's rights or whether you don't. And the women who are most vulnerable...
Well, hang on. He has to take control of the borders and stop the massive numbers of small boats coming across.
Yeah, but the price which he's going to exact on that is to say that if you've been subject to trafficking as a woman, tough luck. That's what he's actually saying. I'm going to return you to your country.
Well, actually, we've seen there have been various amendments proposed that would help protect women.
He's not dealing with
but we've also seen that if you can prove that you are at harm, you won't be subject to
Norman and Emily will be back in 40 minutes' time. Thank you for the moment. Appreciate it. And over 8 million households are going to start receiving a £301 cost. Very specific, that, not 300
No, I know. Why is
£301 cost of living support payment from the government.
This comes as 1 in 5 parents have admitted that childcare costs are eating up more than half of their income.
Well, the Chancellor's spring statement promised parents 15 hours free childcare per week, but childminders and childcare providers are a bit sceptical about this. Theo Chakomba with the story.
With the cost rising and childcare providers closing, parents like Kim from Rotherham are deciding to leave full-time work in order to look after their children, as they say it doesn't make financial sense for them to work.
We do pay for 2 mornings of childcare a week, which is right at the limit of what we can afford. My son has just turned 3, which means he should be eligible for 15 hours free childcare, but there's a cut-off. So because he wasn't 3 before the 1st of April, now means that we have to wait until September before we get any kind of government help.
It's not just having an impact on mothers' finances now, but it's affecting their career aspirations and long-term security.
I'm not currently building up my pension. There's a big gap in my CV, and nobody sets out, going to work, starting their university courses, thinking that that's going to be the position that they will find themselves in a few years' time. So the priority is obviously providing adequate childcare for our children and making sure that they have a happy, healthy home life. So that was the priority. And my professional career had to take a back seat.
A survey by Pregnant Then Screwed found that 1 in 4 parents who use formal childcare say the cost is now more than 75% of their take-home pay. The charity argues there's still a long way to go to level the playing field.
We know that for women, the pay penalty is about 45% when they have a child. For men, they tend to get pay rises and promotions. And that's not necessarily because men are being favoured in the workforce. It's because of all of these barriers that women tend to headbutt from the point that they have a baby, one of which is our extortionately expensive, inaccessible childcare system.
In order to see change, some mothers point at systems in other parts of the world which could help many in the UK.
When you look at other countries, like in Europe, for example, France, where they heavily subsidise their childcare systems, they're sending, it costs parents like €5 a day to send a child to school, compared to it would cost me £56 for a full day's childcare here in the UK, it's just not financially viable.
Many parents say there's still a lot to do to balance the scales to make work more accessible. As they argue, women are facing the greatest barriers to returning to work after having children. Theo Chakomba, GB News.
Stay with us. We'll have more on the crisis in Sudan as the government scrambles to evacuate 4,000 British nationals.
But first, Aidan McGibbon has your Tuesday forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's a chilly start out there this morning, a widespread frost, temperatures a few degrees below freezing in many spots, but plenty of fine weather expected through today, certainly less cloud and rain about compared with yesterday. At the moment, we've got low pressure moving into, Scandinavia really, and behind that low, an Arctic airflow. That's led to a chilly start to the day, but it's also led to a lot of sunshine, very clean air out there. Plenty of blue skies continuing through the morning. I think the cloud will build into the afternoon, and there'll be further wintry showers affecting the north of Scotland and 1 or 2 affecting North Sea coast. So sleet, hail, hill snow, but accumulations not amounting to much at all. 1 or 2 showers affecting Irish Sea coast as well, but elsewhere the cloud builds and it stays dry. Temperatures up to 12 or 13 Celsius in the south, feeling warm in the sunshine and out of the wind, but that wind's got a real chill to it. Into the evening then, with clear skies once again, a widespread frost will form, especially across central and northeastern parts of the UK. Towards the southwest, however, thicker cloud begins to move in, with some outbreaks of rain affecting Cornwall by morning, and that means that it'll be frost-free for much of South Wales and the southwest of England, whilst a frosty start is expected elsewhere. However, for Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern and eastern England, plenty of bright skies first thing, and we'll see sunny spells on and off through the day in these areas. Wintry showers really restricted to the far north of Scotland at this stage, whilst further south, thicker and lower cloud will lead to a fairly dull and gloomy and damp day for South Wales and the southwest of England. Extensive hill fog here and highs of 13 Celsius, whilst below average temperatures are expected to continue in the north until later this week before it warms up this weekend. But before that warm up, there is a spell of rain to come across southern areas on Thursday night.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The government races to rescue up to 4,000 British nationals as factions in Sudan agree a 3-day ceasefire.
Hello there, very good morning. Good to have you on board. It is just 1 minute past 7 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. It's the 25th of April and you're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The two sides in Sudan's civil war have agreed a 72-hour ceasefire as the government moves to evacuate British nationals. Royal Navy ships are on their way to Port Sudan, which is safer than the capital, Khartoum.
It comes amid growing criticism that Britain hasn't acted fast enough on rescuing those stranded by the fighting. As it's revealed, the ambassador was on holiday when the violence broke out.
The Prime Minister has pledged his support for a campaign to protect women's rights launched by Labour and Conservative MPs. Writing in the Express, the father of two daughters vowed to protect single-sex spaces.
Low-income households are starting to receive the latest cost of living payment from the government amid continued high inflation. 8 million people, including those on universal credit, should receive £301 from today.
And the latest hearing in Prince Harry's battle with the press takes place today. The Duke of Sussex is suing Rupert Murdoch's News Group newspapers over allegations of phone hacking.
Thank you very much indeed for getting in touch today. There it is, that's how you do it. And amongst the things you're talking about is Joe Biden. He clearly won't be up to being the world leader if it's expected today. He declares he will run for the presidency once more.
And we've also been talking about marriage proposals this morning. Christopher said, I met my lady when she was 14. I was playing in bands in the 60s. We just celebrated our golden wedding anniversary. She's the love of my life. Christopher, I love it. But you didn't tell us about your proposal.
Well, Dennis does. His happened in 1965. We're talking about these public displays of not affection, of
proposing, yeah.
Proposing.
Social media proposals, effectively.
Funny it would be if somebody said no after going to all that trouble. Dennis goes back to 1965. I bought a box of chocolates. I took one out and replaced it with an engagement ring. I resealed the box and gave it to my girlfriend. She accepted it. That was 57 years ago. It wasn't a fancy engagement, but there it was.
Well, that's quite original. I think that's quite sweet.
I like the fact that he sealed the box.
Yeah,
again.
made it really tricked it. And James says, men should not make big proposals. They are just setting themselves up for failure down the line. I just said we may as well get married. And 25 years later, she's still happy, and so am I.
Oh, he's
Love
a real
all these
romantic,
stories.
isn't he?
No, but perhaps, you know, there is a saying, isn't it? The bigger the wedding, the shorter the marriage.
Oh.
These people that throw all their money into these huge, elaborate weddings, and actually they don't focus on what's important.
Yours was an
The
elaborate
vows.
wedding.
No, it wasn't. It was just a normal white wedding.
It was a nice wedding.
It was
There were
nice.
lots of it. Do you know what I love?
10 years next year,
Is
I'll
that
have been
right?
married.
I'll never forget your father's speech.
Oh, stop it.
About what?
No,
Will I
please
tell
don't.
everybody?
No, we're not talking about my father's speech. In fact, that was edited out of the wedding video. I'm not even joking. Love you, Dad. But...
GBviews at gbnews.uk.
OK, our top story this morning. The Foreign Secretary has confirmed in the past few minutes that the government is coordinating an evacuation of British nationals from Sudan.
And James cleverly said the Foreign Office was contacting those nationals directly and providing routes for departure from the country.
Well, this comes as the US Secretary of State announces a 72-hour ceasefire between the two warring factions in the country.
Now, an hour ago on the programme, we had a British student quite distressed. Her mother was in Sudan visiting family before the fighting broke out. Her name was Sarah El Khalifa.
Every time I contact him, the situation just gets worse and worse and worse, and I have to keep travelling around the country in order to find refuge and to find safety. Like, these are people that they're mothers, they're hard workers, they're people in the UK. Like, my younger brother and sister, they depend on my mother to come back and help them. They're struggling. I think it's absolutely awful what they're doing with government. You're very easily and successfully able to get out the diplomats. Why can't you get out the citizens?
Well, we wish Sarah and her mother all the best. Our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, is in the studio talking about what the Foreign Secretary has had to say about this coordination, or what more the Foreign Office can do. Tom.
Yeah, it's an incredibly complex issue because, of course, it's one thing getting out the diplomats, the consular staff and their families, as we saw successfully take place over the weekend. It's another thing getting out the very disparate and hard to reach and often not known precisely where they are, 4,000 other odd British nationals there, 400 of whom solely British nationals and the rest dual nationals. And it's very difficult for the embassy, not least because the personnel have now left the country, to get in contact and find out where these people precisely are. But that process, we learn in the last few minutes, is now underway, a specific drive to find people and to deliver them routes out of the country. And we understand 2 ships, Royal Naval ships, now on their way to Sudan, one that was based in the Middle East, getting to Port Sudan pretty quickly. That's in the Red Sea, where people can make a route out to the east. Some people have been making a route out to the north as well through Egypt. Of course, the Prime Minister was speaking to the Egyptian President over the weekend as well. So a multi-pronged effort here, but there has been criticism.
It's a massive country as well.
It is a very, very big country, but there has been criticism that the UK was slower on coordinating this effort than some other of our allies.
Yeah, and of course they'll be very sensitive to those criticisms because of what happened in Afghanistan. Really important, I suppose, to point out that there is this ceasefire, however fragile. Historically, they don't tend to hold very well in Sudan. And a bit alarming, really, to hear Andrew Mitchell, the Development Minister at the Dispatch Box, saying to people, it's a judgment call whether or not you decide to break cover from your home and try and get across a war-torn country under a very fragile ceasefire and get to help at a port. Because, to be clear, we should explain, most of the airstrips are closed because it's just simply not safe.
Precisely, and there's been a lot of fighting in the main airport in Khartoum as well, which is a really big concern, because, obviously, if you're going to get a big plane out there, if you're going to get a lot of people out there, you need a significant airport. But crucially, it does seem that the government's communication has moved on from when Andrew Mitchell made that statement yesterday afternoon. At that point, we understood that the sort of extent of communication for lots of the British nationals out there was 1 or 2 text messages saying shelter in place. That seems to have moved on. What the Foreign Secretary is saying this morning is that individual contact is being made. There are big teams in the Foreign Office working on this now, saying, providing specific routes or telling people where they may be able to get to. But ultimately, it's a massive country. There is a lot of disparate fighting. Yes, a 3-day ceasefire was announced by the US Secretary of State in the early hours, but how far will this hold is a big question. How much coordination is there from the leadership of some of these fighting groups to those actually on the ground?
Tom, I want to talk to you about something else. This isn't the only thing the Foreign Secretary's got on his plate today. He's making an address about China, and they're saying, front page of the Daily Telegraph, their big headline is Xi prepares biggest military build-up in history. What about China? What have we got to worry about now with them?
Well, it's a big issue because, of course, there's a lot of international speculation about what China is doing with Taiwan. There is huge speculation, has been for some time, that China wants to invade Taiwan, take over that country, and the UK government is taking an almost nuanced position in terms of how it's dealing with China now, saying that there are areas it wants to work with China, but also warning that if China goes down this path of greater militarization, of more authoritarianism, then that creates a problem, a rupture. It's interesting because it's a tightrope that the UK government is walking. They want to have some influence, they want to have some engagement, so they are not condemning everything about China, not expressing it as the sort of threat that perhaps Liz Truss described it as over the summer. So it's stopping short of that. But again, it will be interesting.
So who does that give the upper hand to? China will know that as well. We're not exactly in a Cold War scenario, are we then, with China?
We're not, and I think this is one of the things that the Foreign Secretary will be saying a little bit later today, that we want to avoid being in a Cold War situation, although there are many people who say that we are practically heading for that, and heading for that quickly. The way that the United States, for example, is rerouting a lot of its supply lines, the way that we're now dealing with semiconductors and all the rest of it, it is starting to look like there is a bit of a Cold War brewing. So, again, we don't have all of the words of what the Foreign Secretary is going to say later today, but it is an absolute tightrope to walk, to try and tread that line, to still have influence, to still be able to say to China, there are going to be consequences if you go further in this direction. But also being condemnatory about what they've done already.
Tom, got to leave it there. Thank you very much for the update. Keep us posted throughout the programme this morning. Thank you.
Now, the Prime Minister's pledged his support for a campaign to protect women's rights that was launched by the MPs Miriam Cates and Rosie Duffield.
Writing in the Express today, and it's their lead this morning, he vowed to protect single-sex spaces, adding that the issue is personal to him because he's a father of 2 daughters. A pledge from our PM to hearten Britain's women, screams the headline.
Well, it comes as today marks 6 months since Sunak took office. So let's get the thoughts of the former advisor to one of his predecessors, Boris Johnson, that is Rory Gagan. Welcome back to the programme, Rory. First of all, on this piece that he's written in the Express, a bit of savvy politicking going on, a bit of a hit back at some of the hate ads from Labour, but a welcome move, I presume, from, well, 50% of the electorate.
Yeah, if not more so, actually. I mean, the more you think about some of these issues around women and single-sex spaces, is actually, as a man speaking personally, I don't actually have any great desire, women at home will be reassured, I don't have any great desire myself to enter a women's changing room. And I think that resonates with most men. And so for a lot of people, they might sort of wonder, is this important? Does it matter? And I think it really does. I think part of this is about politicians being able to speak truth against orthodoxies that are otherwise a bit sort of challenging.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting you say that. But if you were sitting in there as his advisor, is this what you would be saying to him? Yes, have a go, put that top of your inbox, or what would you be saying are the issues that are going to gain him ground?
Well, I think this is certainly an important first step. I think there's still much more to do on violence against women and girls. You know, we look at, obviously, the aftermath of the terrible sort of murder of Sarah Everard. There's a huge need to rebuild some of the confidence around policing. And hopefully we'll hear in the next couple of weeks, back to kind of 6 months in, we'll hopefully hear whether the government have indeed hit their sort of 20,000 police officer sort of target. And I think there's also something about the reality that, you know, a lot of parents are finding with the gender identity type stuff, which is related, I think, to some of this. They're finding their kids coming home and they're wondering where some of these questions are coming from. And so I think political leadership that shows a willingness to engage in some of these thorny issues that for some people are just common sense. You know, the fact, you know, we just need to look at Scotland, the fact that people struggle to articulate or struggle to see the issue with putting convicted rapists in a women's prison. The fact that that was even a scenario, I think, shows how far politics can sometimes, start to drift away quite vehemently and violently from where the public are at.
Yeah, I have to say, so many emails on this morning about women's spaces, infiltration as it's being described. The thought of men pretending to be women in women's spaces such as toilets and changing rooms is, to be quite frank, absolutely terrifying. That's from Jenny in East Sussex. Jackie Beck says, good morning. Women have experienced from a young age onwards a recognition of potential threats. It's in our DNA. It's ever present, especially now with the fight back against gender activism. And that's from Jackie. She says, please do not minimise it. And Jackie Halliday also saying it is vitally important that single-sex spaces are respected, and lists all the long reasons why have we been dehumanised.
OK, but let me ask you this, right? Does this mean then we now turn a cold shoulder to someone who is transitioning?
No, you can have neutral spaces which are open to people who are trans. It's not to say people who are trans are all of threat, but we know that people do pretend and masquerade as trans and as an ability to try and get into female safe spaces.
And I think that's right. And I think the Prime Minister was clear in his piece in the paper about actually there is a cohort of people, a small, and some would say even tiny kind of cohort of people actually who suffer from the gender dysphoria and who therefore a transition may be the right path for them. And I think he's clear that we should recognise those people and treat them with compassion. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think where we've ended up and where some of the campaigners on the sort of let's open all the spaces to everyone sort of side of the argument, I think they've overstepped, essentially. And I think now we're starting to see politicians, particularly the more shrewd ones, recognise that there's a need to pull it back.
OK, your views very welcome. That's what we want. Let's see what we've got here. Martine says, I run a ladies-only gym for our many Muslim members. Rishi's news will make them feel very secure and happy from a religious viewpoint. Steve says, in my gym or anywhere else, couldn't guarantee me a male-only changing room. I wouldn't go there.
Listen to this one. Hi, Isabel Naiman. This is from Jane. 5 years ago, myself and my female friends would get together and we would chat about life, about kids, about work. Moving forwards to now, every time we all meet up, no matter what political viewpoints we have, we rage about the erosion of our protected rights and areas. Believe me, there's more women angry now than you realise, and they are hugely concerned, and they will show their hand at the voting booths.
I do think it is a general creep towards these demarcation lines coming down. I mean, I said we have a unisex toilet here. I don't like it. You don't like it. I don't see who it benefits, except it probably saves money because there's one loo instead of two loos type thing. But it's just, you're right, having your own space is important. Yeah,
absolutely.
OK. The time, 16 minutes past 7. Thanks very much indeed, Rory. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories. And more than 8 million households will start receiving a £301 cost of living support payment from the government. It is the first of three, totalling up to £900 for those eligible on benefits such as universal credit or pension credit.
Legal action against the Royal College of Nursing in an attempt to declare a planned strike in May is unlawful, says the government. RCN members in England planning a 48-hour walkout at the start of the night shift on April the 30th. This is a long-running dispute over pay. Government hoping to make that walkout illegal. They'll challenge it in court.
Over 17 million trips could be made over this bank holiday weekend. The RAC have warned road congestion is expected to be worse than for the coronation.
Which is the next weekend. Here's the thing. Bank holiday weekends in England, do you know where I go every bank holiday weekend?
Belfast.
Nowhere. Right, I'd either go to Belfast, right, but I would, if I live just within the M25, and I think, what is the point? You're just getting onto a car park and sitting there for hours. Are you one for travelling on bank holidays?
Yeah. I will be going to Devon this weekend. It's a 40th, about 30 friends of us and all our kids.
But you don't really know.
Barrelling down the A303.
Barrelling.
We'll be stuck nose to nose probably all the way down, but...
Yeah. See, but why?
Why? Because it's fun.
Fun.
Yeah, we'll be on the beach, we'll be out and about having fun, rounders, enjoying the sunshine.
But I really feel for people who are stuck in traffic and you know, maybe they've got a pet with them,
kids.
toilet problems with people in the car, young and old. Just my idea of hell. I don't bother. But
that makes me laugh because you actually love going out in your car for a drive.
Oh, I do, but just not on a bank holiday weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I'd get out of the country, or I'd go back to Ireland, where things aren't as bad at all on days like that. Anyway, 18 minutes past the hour. The latest hearing in Prince Harry's battle with the press in the country will take place today. What's he doing?
Well, he is suing the publisher of The Sun over allegations of phone hacking, and we can speak to our national reporter Paul Hawkins about it all. He's live for us outside the High Court. Good morning to you, Paul. Look, do we think we might get Prince Harry attending? Because he was there in the flesh just a few weeks ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Morning to you. Morning to Eamonn as well. He did turn up unexpectedly, so he may do today. We don't know whether he will turn up or not. His case is also being heard alongside Hugh Grant, who may also turn up here at the Royal Courts of Justice. It is round 3 in Prince Harry's latest battle with British newspapers. Of course, he has ongoing legal cases as well against Associated Newspapers, who own the Daily Mail, and Mirror Group newspapers, who own the Daily Mirror. This one is against the owners of The Sun and the now defunct News of the World, their news group newspapers. He filed the claim over allegations of phone hacking and paying private investigators. He filed this claim in 2019. Now it's finally being heard in terms of a preliminary hearing to see whether it will go to trial, and he says that the allegations involve making 101 payments to private investigators to get private information during the early 2000s, when The Sun ran headlines such as "Emotional Harry rang girlfriend at midnight to confess," "Chelsea's topless treat for Harry," and "Harry's mad night of lust." Now, Harry argues that this had a huge impact on his family life, and he's seeking £200,000 in damages, although, as we know, for Prince Harry, it is, of course, personal. Now, News Group newspapers deny any allegations of phone hacking or paying private investigators. They say The Sun does not accept liability or make any admissions to the allegations, and we're expecting the lawyers over the next 3 days to argue that because it has taken so long to bring the claim, remember, these are allegations relating to the early 2000s, that in effect, this doesn't need to go to trial because it's taken Prince Harry so long. His lawyers have argued that the News Group newspapers have made attempts to deliberately conceal the evidence. It's awkward for King Charles coming so soon or so close to his coronation, because in the past Prince Harry has made allegations that the royal family had done a deal with News UK, that's Rupert Murdoch's group who own The Sun, not to bring any legal cases against British newspapers. It's awkward for Rebecca Brooks, the CEO of News UK. She was editor of The Sun at the time. Prince Harry in the past has called her a infected pustule on the backside of humanity, so there's no love lost between those two. And of course, she was found not guilty of phone hacking during a criminal trial in 2014. She may be feeling quite nervous because the proof, the criminal burden of proof in civil cases is much lower, and there are no juries involved. Now, it is a 3-day hearing. If the judge decides this is going to go to trial, it will begin in January.
Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Right. We're going to debate whether it's a good thing for restaurant menus to give you certain information, like there's no meat. Absolutely no meat.
And the carbon footprint of whatever is on there to let you make eco choices when ordering your food. Is it a step too far when you're trying to kick back and have a meal out with the family? Let us know your thoughts after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest. Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 7:26 and breaking news to bring you in the last few minutes. The Office for National Statistics has revealed government borrowing, and it is eye-watering. They borrowed £139.2 billion in the year to March. That is the 4th highest since records began, and wait for it, 18.1 billion more than the previous year. The official figures show that last month alone, the government borrowed £16.3 billion, which is higher than a year ago. Sorry, last month was £21.5 billion, which was £16.3 billion higher than a year ago. And in the last few minutes, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has been speaking, and he says that these numbers reflect the inevitable consequences of borrowing eye-watering sums to help families and businesses through a pandemic and Vladimir Putin's energy crisis. And he goes on to say that the government has a plan. But that is pretty serious money,
sounds
isn't
like
it?
Blackadder. We've got a plan. Yeah, what is it? To steal it all back from us?
We have a
tax.
clear plan to get debt falling, which will reduce the financial pressure we pass on to our children and grandchildren. But that is, the government borrowing total has reached £139.2 billion. The kind of sums of money most of us can't really fathom. It's kind of like the size of the universe, isn't it? It's just so huge, tens of billions. So there we go.
Well, it is totally depressing, but, you know, that's what they did during the pandemic, and that's what they thought was the right thing to do then. Now, we're going to talk about what's on your menu. There is a restaurant chain called...
Oaxaca.
Oaxaca. Now, how come I've never heard of a Oaxaca?
Oh, well, you'd love it.
Oh,
you would love it.
If I loved meat.
They do Deliveroo as well.
Do they? Never heard of it. So what? It's a Mexican...
I believe it's Mexican. yeah, it's Mexican food.
And so the thing is, Mexican food, and there's quite a lot of meat in that.
Yeah.
But the idea is Oaxaca says, no, we're not having meat on the menu. They've cut steak from its menu in an effort to lower carbon emissions.
Well, now the Vegetarian Society is calling for carbon pricing on menus so customers can see the impact of their food choices.
What does that mean, carbon
Well,
pricing?
if you've ordered an avocado that's come from Argentina or something, then you can see how many air miles and how much carbon has been expended so that you can have avocado on toast.
That would make me feel really good.
Yeah.
That would be very good. Where does it all end? Should restaurants be forced to be totally meat-free? Joining us today, journalist and former Brexit Party MEP is Mr. Martin Dobney. He loves a bit of meat, don't you? Favourite food is?
Absolutely. I had a ribeye steak last night in protest of this ridiculous move.
OK, if you could just turn yourself to that camera there, just to that's it, and it looked gorgeous like that. And there beside him is the Chief Executive of the Vegetarian Society, Richard McElwain. And Richard says, what? That we desperately need to make changes to protect the planet. So, Richard, what's going on at Oaxaca?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you'd expect the Vegetarian Society to be chuffed about the moves from Oaxaca, wouldn't you? You wouldn't expect anything else. But let's not get too carried away here. You know, they've taken 2 dishes off the menu. They've taken a couple of steak dishes off. Eamonn, if you go in and try Oaxaca for the first time, you'll still find beef on the menu and other types of meat. And I think in some ways it's representative of what's happening in the UK overall. You know, in the last 10 years, our consumption of meat has come down by almost a fifth. Survey in 2022 showed 6 out of 10 people were actually quite willing to reduce their meat. So I don't think it's this business just, you know, acting on its own. They're actually, I think, looking at consumer trends and making a decision. You know, they've had carbon calculations on the menu for 2 years so that people are a little bit better informed. Now they're going that little step further and taking some of the high-carbon dishes off the menu.
But, Richard, meat's meat. I don't understand why they're just taking one type of meat off. I mean, that's a bit of a headline grabber, that really. Are they really doing anything for the carbon footprint?
Well, what they're saying is that when you look at most evidence, beef tops the charts when it comes to carbon footprint. So what they've done is they've looked at a quintessential beef dish that people recognise, i.e. steak, and taken those 2 off. So there's a logic to it. Absolutely, they've taken the higher carbon footprint meats off the agenda, off the menu.
Well, Martin, as a meat lover, this is not something you're impressed by.
Yeah, I think any Mexican restaurant that's meat-free deserves to be customer-free. It was even their best-selling dish. This is a complete virtue signal. They've still got beef on the menu. And what about avocados, a staple of Mexican cuisine? It's 25 million cubic metres of water used in the British avocado market alone. Creates monocultures. It creates food poverty for locals, slave labour. They're shipped 6,000 miles in refrigerated containers. That in itself has a huge carbon footprint. This isn't about cutting back carbon footprint. It's about nudging us into becoming miserable vegans like Jeremy Corbyn. Well, we can all agree one Jeremy Corbyn is quite enough. When I go to a menu, when I go to a restaurant, I don't want guilt to be on the menu. I don't want to think, oh, if I choose beef, I'm helping children to burn in the Middle East. It's a guilt trip. It's trying to change how we eat. We should have freedom of choice. And I just don't like being told how to think by the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, governments. We're being nudged in towards being vegans. We should have freedom of choice.
Richard?
I can't believe the great British public are so faint-hearted that they couldn't cope with having a little bit of extra information on a menu. You know, we have calorie information on there because we've got an obesity crisis in this country. We've now got some carbon information on some menus, which helps people make informed decisions. And just on the avocado front, I mean, it's right, you know, they are shipped in, but the carbon footprint is substantially less than any meat dish. And furthermore, Oaxaca have taken the decision actually to move away from avocado and their guacamole and use fava beans. So, you know, they're not virtue signaling. They're actually trying their best to make informed, sustainable choices.
No, but you're now saying we should be taxed. We should be taxed more for eating meat. Why? You know, we pay tax on everything we buy. It's a punitive tax. What we should be doing, instead of importing stuff from halfway around the world, we should be encouraging British farmers, encourage the British meat industry, eat locally, eat seasonally, rather than being a global industry where we're importing avocados. Why not support British industry? Stop worrying about being puritanical about our food choices and instead support domestic produce.
I don't think I'm puritanical. And actually, I couldn't agree more. You know, I'm always at pains to say we're an incredibly pro-farming organisation. You know, arable farming and horticulture are a mainstay of our farming community. And actually, there are some studies that suggest if we stopped feeding half of the grain and the vegetables and the fodder crops that we feed to animals, half of which are fed to animals, and fed them to ourselves, we could have much better UK food security in this country and actually reduce our reliance on imports, as you say.
Richard, it is interesting that it seems to be the food sector where this kind of focus seems to be directed. I mean, we could easily start to try and tot up our carbon footprint in every different walk of life, whether we're going to work or, wherever we're in a shopping centre, whatever it may be.
We'll be doing that too.
But why is it when we're in a restaurant that we get bombarded with this?
Well, because the two greatest ways that we will limit the worst impacts of climate change are through energy, so getting ourselves off fossil fuel, and land use. And predominant impacts associated with land use are from agriculture. And so that's why you'll find people go on about fossil fuels and they'll go on about land use and agriculture increasingly now as the two areas where we can make the most substantial difference.
You see, but that difference, when you look at the UK and the tiny size of our cattle farms and whatever, then you look at the USA, oh my word, they cover states, the way they intensively farm cattle. Argentina, exactly the same. I just put it to you, are we not picking on the wrong subjects here? Are we not penalising British farming once again when we should be penalising these massive, massive farms worldwide?
Absolutely, we should be penalising those massive farms worldwide, but it doesn't mean that we as a country can't show leadership. If we are Great Britain, we led the Industrial Revolution. In many ways, we could lead a green revolution if we're only brave enough to take it and show the world what needs to be done.
Yeah,
let's not forget that it's not like these huge mega farms and ranches in the States and South America aren't under pressure to change. They are. There are lots of policymakers, governments, pressure groups, all focused on those as well. But it's not an excuse because somebody else isn't doing something to not take action ourselves here at home.
Yeah, but that's always the answer, isn't it? It's punishment, it's taxation. And the people who make these policies in central government and tell us how to live, tell us how to eat, they cycle, they're vegetarians, they're out of step with ordinary people. And we're made to pay carbon taxes on menus, won't encourage people, it'll have the opposite effect. It'll make us feel we're being punished. It's all, you're a vegetarian. Offer us more carrot and less stick.
But there is a climate emergency, Martin.
Well, I mean, how will that be solved by me having a piece of locally sourced, fresh, beautiful meat from Britain, as opposed to an avocado from halfway around the world?
A final thought from you, Richard.
It's got substantially less of a carbon footprint than even that locally sourced beef, to be honest.
OK.
I want to say, Richard, for anybody, and it may well be the majority of people will look and say, oh, vegetarianism's not for me. I want to say to you, you look a fit and healthy man. You don't look as if you're going to fall down a drain or anything like that. And whereas Dobney, who eats meat all the time, look at him, he's like a stick insect. There beside you, he is. But it is interesting. You feel, Richard, that you get a good, healthy, balanced, sustainable diet. Do you eat stuff that make you lick your lips?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you eat fish?
I eat all sorts of rich bean stews. I eat tofu. The wonderful thing is, and what I'm always keen to say is, vegetarian or veganism is not a fad. Veganuary has been fantastic, but it has made people think that somehow this is like a Gen Z thing from the last 10 years. Our society has been around since 1847, and people have eaten vegetarian and vegan diets for millennia, going back to Southeast Asia and India, and they're all still fit and well through the generations. So, it is actually healthier. Vegetarians and vegans, studies have shown, are healthier overall.
Okay.
If you want to find out more, sign up for National Vegetarian Week.
Well, listen, Martin Daubney,
you can find out all about it.
Won't be signing up, I'm pretty sure, but we're thankful to both of you. Martin Daubney, Richard McIlwain, thank you both for your time this morning. And let us know at home where you stand in this
I'll
debate.
tell you where I stand.
Go on, then.
And I want to know what Martin's view is on this as well. Martin, I have a terrible guilt complex. I do like meat. I genuinely like meat, right? But I do have an issue since I rescued a dog 12 years ago of eating anything with eyes. And that includes cows or lamb or anything else. I feel really bad, and then I eat it.
Yeah, well, that's the price you've got to pay, Eamonn.
But that's, I know, but then it's people like Richard are making me feel like that.
Yeah, but that's what they do. They go around making us feel guilty. And what I say to him, you know, my missus is a vegetarian. I like vegetarian food, but I don't want to be taxed.
Yes.
Feel guilty and terrible about my existence. Incentivised. Don't make us feel like we're killing the planet by making a beef choice.
Who would be a farmer? Who would be a farmer? That's why I say a British farmer. There's always something impeding them making a living, and this is the latest thing.
100%.
Thank you very much indeed, Martin. Thank you. 22 minutes before the hour.
Yeah, and stay with us. We're going to be asking if cameras should be installed in prison cells so that convicted killers can't hide from their victims' families. Norman Baker and Emily Carr will be having their say after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And we serve you up the newspapers now on this Tuesday morning. Join us to go through those. We've got Norman Baker and we have got Emily Carver. Norman,
Just talk about your suit. Sorry. I mean, I know everyone listening on the radio can't see it, but those who are watching on the TV, every time we cut to you, I'm just blown away by this beautiful purple suit, but also a purple shirt and a purple tie, purple trousers. Are those socks purple?
Yeah, they are actually.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
And is this just for our benefit, or are you going to a
totally
purple
for your
convention?
benefit.
Oh, Norman.
Making me look very drab.
No one can ever call you drab.
So,
What's this? Oh, you have a purple suit as well.
Who doesn't?
You both look like the Cadbury milk tray. Well, he wore black, didn't he?
I said he looked like a grape.
I prefer the Cadbury's milk tray.
I think that's nicer, yes.
OK, this Sudan situation, and we've been talking about that today, but the Foreign Secretary is very busy. Also in his in-tray, Norman, is China, and we're going to expect to hear him talk about this now. Here's the thing with the government. The government want to talk tough on China, but not too tough.
That's exactly right. And I think the Foreign Secretary, not talking about Sudan, interestingly, but talking about China, refers to the biggest military build-up in history. That is happening. There's no doubt the Chinese are determined to recover Taiwan as they see it, which has been independent since 1949, from the Long March and Mao Zedong and all that. And they won't give up. And at some point, the Chinese will invade Taiwan. I'm absolutely certain about that. So we do have to think about how we're going to handle that. There's also a story in The Guardian, which is UK government's funding for Confucius Institutes to be axed. This is something I argued for years ago when I was president of Tibet Society, that we've got these infiltrations going on in our country where the Chinese soft power, as it is, comes and tells students in this country, in return for money they give to universities, a whole lot of garbage about history, pretending, for example, that Taiwan's already part of China, which it isn't. So, I mean, we have these lies going on, and the government's right to pull the funding, but frankly, the Confucius Institute should be shut down, in my view.
Emily, you want to talk about business leaders. Rishi Sunak facing some difficult questions yesterday about this tourist tax being described as a spectacular own goal by Burberry yesterday.
Yes, so the government made this, in my view, a ridiculous decision to end tax-free shopping back
it was
in 2021.
specifically Rishi Sunak, to be clear, wasn't it, when he was Chancellor? And he said there were good reasons for it. I'd love to know what they were.
Well, just to get more
Generate
tax.
more cash,
Generate more cash, but it's costing us cash by the looks of things. This is what business leaders are saying anyway, particularly in the West End. We know the number of Chinese, Arabs, people from across the world who come to London to spend money. And now, apparently, they're choosing Paris or Berlin, and probably not Berlin, but other areas of Europe to come and spend their money. And these are massive spenders. And ending tax-free shopping means that international tourists are going to choose elsewhere.
Although we were debating this with Biggins yesterday, and none of us knew anybody who'd ever gone somewhere to buy a handbag and then come back and claim the tax back or whatever.
Well, the Chinese do this a lot.
The Chinese do it a lot.
Because it's 20%. So you're going to go to another country. If you can get a product for that much cheaper, we can all see what products cost online. You can check which country's better. And people do. I mean, I've never done this myself, but people do travel just to shop. And
It'd be
get
quite
these
difficult
brands.
to sell a tax cut for the Chinese, though,
No,
wouldn't it?
well, this is the thing. People were like, "Oh yes, why should foreigners get better rates?" But that's not the issue. The issue is it's costing our economy money. I mean, and it's also a personal story. You know, one West End tailor whose regular overseas client took his £60,000 worth of custom to a Parisian company purely because of this VAT that's going to be charged now. So yes, lots of money is being lost. Apparently, this is worse for business than COVID.
What do you think, Norman?
Well, I mean, I'm in two minds. I think Emily's analysis is probably correct in terms of the impact on the economy. But on the other hand, it is just sticking the gullet a bit to be giving discounts to foreign countries.
But who cares, Norman?
Well, I care in a sense.
About the optics. I just care about the business.
Well, I care about the business, but I also care about the optics. I think I care about both. And they point in different directions. That's the issue.
OK. Norman, we want to talk about the new Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk. He has been urged, and this is a story running in the Mirror today, that if prisoners don't turn up for their sentencing, that cameras should be placed in their cells so that they do not escape the gaze of their victims.
Well, I don't want to sound very illiberal, but my view is that they should be in the dock.
Yeah.
And they should be there to hear the sentence.
Well, there's a rising trend, isn't there, of not doing it?
And I think they should be, if they won't go, they should be removed forcibly from their cell and taken forcibly to the dock. That's what I think should happen to them.
Yeah.
What if they're then disruptive?
Well, they can get a longer sentence.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry, this is a matter of justice.
Who was it last week that didn't turn up?
Oh, I can't remember. But
Thomas Cashman, his name was.
Thomas Cashman, and there was also the...
in relation to which...
He refused to leave his cell when sentenced for murdering a 9-year-old Olivia
Pratt-Corbell.
Exactly.
And it was also the girl who was murdered in London by the guy who'd just been released from prison, McSweeney. Was it Jordan McSweeney?
Yeah.
He also refused to go up into the dock, and it's so difficult for the families of the victims.
Well, you just think, why are they even given a choice?
Absolutely.
I mean, you would have thought, clap them in irons and march them to there, gag them if you have to or whatever, but make them sit throughout that.
Particularly if the families of the victims in cases of murder and things want it.
Yeah, OK. Now, listen, right, so also there's been a survey done as to what is the best biscuit.
You may have noticed this lovely plate of biscuits, and I have to say, it's been sat next to us all morning. We've been very abstemious.
Well, we've got, very abstemious because the foulest biscuit in the world, the Bourbon, is there.
I love a Bourbon.
What's that about? There are digestives there.
Yum.
There are
Chocolate digestives, there's all the shortbreads.
Leibniz.
Butter shortbreads and a Jaffa cake.
And a Jaffa cake there as well. And a survey has said that the best one of those biscuits to dunk is, in fact, a Jaffa cake. You've got a cup of tea there.
I'm going to take a biscuit to dunk, but I'm going to take a chocolate Leibniz. I'm sorry, a Jaffa cake is not a biscuit. A Jaffa cake is a cake.
Well, shall I take a Jaffa cake?
You can have this freshly made tea.
Oh, thank you.
It's for VAT reasons.
For VAT reasons, and they decided in the court case it was a cake.
Oh, I remember that.
Because you pay VAT on cakes, you don't pay VAT on
trust
biscuits.
you to spoil the story. But which biscuit/cake, then, is the best to dunk?
Oh, I think a plain one, really.
Give your Leibniz a dunk, and let's see what happens, and give your Jaffa cake. And what's the definition of a good dunk? Is it that it doesn't fall apart and sloppy at the bottom?
Gently put in.
OK, you like it?
Yeah, it's staying together. What can I say?
It's personal.
Do you feel left out, Eamonn?
No, I don't, because I know my biscuit isn't there, and that would be custard
Oh, it tastes
cream.
horrible dunked.
Custard cream by far and away is the
Jaffa
best
cake. Apparently it
biscuit
takes
to dunk.
3 minutes and 16 seconds for a Jaffa cake to fall apart after dunking. A Choco Leibniz, which interestingly was the second one you chose, and I have to say, my favourite Choco Bicky, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Bourbons that Eamonn absolutely loathes, 2 minutes and 28 seconds. The worst, a digestive falls apart after 11 and a half seconds. A Fox's Crunch Cream, oh, they're delicious, aren't they? 15 seconds. And you like a custard cream?
Yeah.
47 seconds.
Can I just point out my chocolate Leibniz doesn't last 2 minutes, 20 seconds. It lasts about...
Yeah, exactly, by the time you've eaten it.
May I just say that advise people at home not to dunk your Jaffa cake. It is disgusting.
Yeah.
Foamy.
I can't see why the duration makes it more desirable to dunk. So, as Norman says, 3 minutes 16, who's waiting 3 minutes 16 to actually eat?
But I think the point is, if you're eating a digestive and you've dunked it and then it suddenly slops to the bottom of your cup, then in the time you've eaten the biscuit, you've got just slop in the bottom of your tea. Well, at least it would last, a little longer if it was firmer.
I just tend to dip it
by... a little bit in the time, you're OK.
I don't quite know what I want to dip, because I've got raspberry tea, and I don't think any of them really go with raspberry tea.
No, how about jammy Dodgers might go with raspberry tea?
Oh, no.
Oh, yes, that would be perfect.
I'm not a jammy Dodger girl.
A Tunnocks wafer is very good as well. See, you go. No idea what I'm talking about.
No idea. Is that a Belfast thing?
No, it's a Scottish thing.
Oh, sorry. Of course it is. Sorry to people in Scotland.
It's like the Tunnocks marshmallows.
Why do you trick me up all morning?
Well, I don't know. I can't help if you're stupid. I can't be held responsible. Right.
You've got to take back control, Isabel. You've got to catch him out.
I will. That's a good point. On that note, say thank you to both of you, and we're going to bring you up to date at 9 minutes to 8 with today's top stories.
Foreign Secretary said that the UK is contacting British nationals directly with routes for an evacuation out of Sudan. It's after a 3-day ceasefire was agreed, raising hopes of rescue efforts across the country.
Government borrowing reached £139.2 billion in the year to March, making it the fourth highest since records began. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says it's a consequence of borrowing to help families and businesses through the pandemic and also through Putin's energy crisis.
He says he's got a plan to pay it all back. Heaven help us. The latest hearing in Prince Harry's legal battles with British press will take place at the High Court this morning. The Duke of Sussex is suing News Group newspapers over alleged unlawful information gathering. The hearing is expected to last 3 days.
Now, a couple who ran the London Marathon have gone viral after a very public proposal that took place at the finish line on Sunday.
Runner Luca, he popped the question to his girlfriend Barney at the end of the race, delighting fans on Instagram. Why is anybody delighted? Why does anybody care?
Because people love love.
Oh, I loved that. That was lovely. Oh.
Don't ruin this.
No, if she just had said no, that would have been funny. But anyway, is a public proposal like that a bit cringeworthy, or is it, as you would say?
Oh, it's just lovely.
Just lovely.
It's just lovely. Well, let's get the view from Anat Lavcrow, who is a full-time proposal planner. Wow, this is a new one on me.
Good morning.
You get to plan these special moments for people.
Yes.
Is that not a bit of a cop-out for the proposer?
Listen, we really try and understand the couple and make sure it's sentimental and meaningful. So I don't think it's a cop-out because they do get that special moment, and it's really about the couple celebrating.
Yes.
So
what's your proportion of men proposing compared to women proposing?
Yes. So, very good question. Most of our proposals are men proposing.
Yeah.
But we do get the odd one where a woman proposes to a man. We also do same-sex
proposals.
Couples as well. So we do all sorts.
And have you ever seen any go spectacularly wrong? The kind that Eamonn likes, where they say no.
No, we're not going to marry you. No.
We like to say we have 100% yes and success rate.
Do you?
Yes.
Gosh.
Knock on wood, of course, but yes.
And how much would it cost? Sorry, not your personal rate pricing, but you know, in general, in your sector, what does it cost to hire a proposal planner?
So proposals typically begin at £2,000 to £5,000. Usually, the person coming to us would save up for the special occasion. And for something like that, you can get a private event space overlooking maybe London. So, for example, the Shangri-La Shard is a place we work from, and it's amazing. Or you could get another wonderful view. You can get flowers, decoration, photography as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you've got to arrange all of this without one of the partners, usually the woman, not knowing what's going on.
Yes, so there's always an element of jeopardy of what if she figures it out? What if she says no? But again, as of now, 100% success and yes rate. We try and be quite sneaky and also try and find out a little bit about the woman by, figure out things online, what's been said about her, what she likes. And we just make sure that it's very personal and meaningful. So that's...
I just spotted are you engaged at the moment, but not yet? Or are you married?
I'm married.
You're married.
I'm married.
Tell us about your proposal. Presume you didn't do it.
I did not do it. I did have a clue, and I do think lots of the people getting engaged have a hint. So my proposal was basically we came on a visit, and it was really lovely. We went to a special romantic dinner. We came back, and the room was fully decorated, and my partner asked me to.
And did you ever think of saying no?
Never.
What do you make of, we were talking about this proposal at the end of the London Marathon. Yes. You've just sludged through 26.2 miles. You can hardly catch your breath. And then there's this moment which could leave a lot of people breathless at that particular time. That was a brave one, with people looking on.
Yes, so it was definitely brave. But I think for this specific couple, they're clearly very passionate about running, and it's something they love to do and likely love to do together. So because of that, I think it's the perfect proposal for them. What's important when you go out to do a public proposal is to make sure that the person you're proposing to isn't embarrassed, doesn't think it's cringeworthy, like that said.
That's key, isn't it? If they're not an exhibitionist, don't make it really public.
Don't make it. If they are, then shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah. And do you ever get anybody saying no, ever anybody backing out of it? Because you're right about the embarrassment thing.
Yeah.
I know people who've said yes to engagement proposals simply because they were embarrassed.
Yeah,
they were
so
embarrassed.
do I.
And then,
Oh, no.
Yeah, and then it's all gone wrong afterwards.
Well, we haven't heard that, and we like to think our couples have a happily ever after.
I have to say, I've never thought about it before, but now I think about it, upon reflection, I actually think my proposal was one of the happiest moments of my life.
It's because you organised it.
No, I didn't. I had nothing to do with it.
You had everything to do with it. I remember working with you at the time, and you had the ring all selected.
No, I didn't.
You did.
No, I didn't.
You had it all selected.
I swear I did not. It was one of the happiest moments of my life, probably happier than the wedding itself, because there's just too much pressure on that moment.
Me your husband didn't know what a ring exactly?
Well, he did research, but clandestine research. It's a long story, but honestly, he foiled me, and it was such a happy memory.
It definitely is good to get someone in on it in the proposal and then get a little bit of detail.
Well, there you are. Well. So you've spread the romance around to everyone today, maybe put them in the mood, someone else to ask the question.
It's going to cost you, though.
Anna Lavcrow, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so happy. You're like the sort of happy person I'd like to marry. Must be nice to
that's because she works in love all day long.
Yeah, but she smiles. Imagine, you know, starting your day with somebody who smiles.
Oh, stop it.
Anyway, here's the weather. Oh, there is no weather, but anyway, here's the break then.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go. But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Prime Minister announces a large-scale evacuation of British nationals from Sudan as a 3-day ceasefire is announced.
Good morning, it's 2 minutes past 8. It's Tuesday, the 25th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news this morning, Rishi Sunak says the government is mobilising RAF flights for a large-scale evacuation of British passport holders from Sudan. It follows the announcement of a 3-day ceasefire between the two sides in the conflict.
It comes amid growing criticism that the UK hasn't acted fast enough on rescuing those stranded by fighting, as it's revealed the ambassador to Sudan was on holiday when the violence broke out.
The Prime Minister's pledged his support for a campaign to protect women's rights launched by Labour and Conservative MPs. Writing in the Express newspaper, the father of 2 daughters vowed to protect single-sex spaces.
Low-income households are starting to receive the latest cost of living payments from the government amid continued high inflation. 8 million people, including those on universal credit, should receive just over £300 from today.
And the latest hearing in Prince Harry's battle with the press takes place today. The Duke of Sussex is suing Rupert Murdoch's News Group newspapers over allegations of phone hacking.
And lots of views coming in. We had a debate about vegetarianism in the last hour. Lots of you getting involved in that. Jenny says, my hubby would fade away if he couldn't eat meat. He hates most vegetables. He'll eat potatoes and peas a lot and lots of cheese. When will cheese be brought into the equation? It's a never-ending conundrum. That's true, because, of course, cheese comes from cows, milk comes from cows. Do we all have to give up that if we're vegans?
Come from goats.
Oh, that's true. I do love goat's cheese.
Or sheep, can't it, as well?
It's just never going to happen because I just love all these things too much.
The reason we're talking about this is that the choice has been taken away from a lot of you. One restaurant chain are taking meat off the menu. Well, they're taking steak off the menu, certainly as well, because they say it's got too big a carbon footprint. Do you mind about that? Do you think it's a good thing? Here's what you do. GBNews at gbnews.uk.
Just this message tickled me. I eat meat all the time, but when I fly, I always pre-select the Asian vegetarian option, and I always get a great vegetable curry and even some sag paneer sometimes. So obviously trying to offset part of the guilt.
Oh, OK. Thank you. Keep your views coming. Right, top story this morning. In the past hour, the Prime Minister has confirmed that the government is coordinating a large-scale evacuation of British passport holders from Sudan.
Yeah, it follows last night's announcement of a 72-hour ceasefire in the country between the two warring factions.
Now, earlier on the programme, we had a British student nurse. Her mother was in Sudan visiting family before the fighting broke out. This is what she had to say.
Every time I contact him, the situation just gets worse and worse and worse, and I have to keep travelling around the country in order to just find refuge and to find safety. Like, these are people that they're mothers, they're hard workers, they're people in the UK. Like, my younger brother and sister, they depend on my mother to come back and help them. They're struggling. I think it's absolutely awful what they're doing with government. You're very easily and successfully able to get out the diplomats. Why can't you get
of Sudan from the Red Sea? This, however, is a very difficult operation. It would require people travelling huge distances across poor infrastructure in what is a vast, vast country, one of the biggest countries in Africa. This ceasefire has changed the game. It means that we're able to get flights out of there. There's an airfield just outside the capital of Khartoum that the United Kingdom government will be using. And it is, as you say, a race against time to get these people. 400 sole British citizens, and in terms of the 4,000, most of them dual passport holders, but still obviously an obligation from the British government there. And there will be a priority basis of these people, getting them to the airfield, getting them on those aeroplanes and getting them out. A very difficult operation, though, because a lot of these people are disparately spread across the vast country. So it's a much more logistically challenging task than getting the diplomats out, as we saw in that SAS operation over the weekend.
Well, I mean, that's not to be understated either. Incredibly complex to do something like that under cover of darkness as well. What's also an extra complication, I suppose, in all of this is a lot of people aren't necessarily resident in the country. We know that there are 71 NHS doctors, for example, who were there temporarily. Indeed, the woman we spoke to this morning, whose grandmother was there, just visiting family, have been caught up in this. And the problem with that is it's very hard to keep a track of where they are and where they've been, and that adds to the complexity of it all, not least the fact that it's so violent on the ground. I mean, Sarah, the student we spoke to this morning, said that her mother had been in the streets when the prison had been opened, and rapists and murderers were then released into the town.
It's total chaos in the country, and that's what we have to emphasise here. And that's the risk to Brits currently in the country. Unlike embassy staff who may have been political targets for assassination or anything else, the danger to British citizens now comes from the general sense of chaos, from the crossfire and everything else. The risk here, I suppose, in the midst of this operation, despite the ceasefire, is just how solid are these chains of command within the fighting groups. Just because some leaders have agreed a ceasefire doesn't necessarily mean that those fighting it out on the ground will pause for these 3 days. That's one of the big calculations, one of the big calculated risks that no doubt the government has taken.
Can I just ask you about the role of the ambassador in all of this, Giles Lever? He went on holiday and war broke out, I believe, the following day, but he didn't return, and that was some time ago now. Is there a fair comparison to be made with the kind of bungled evacuations from Kabul and Afghanistan and the fact that at that point the Foreign Secretary was on holiday? The word holiday instantly brings back bad memories, doesn't it, when it comes to these kind of situations?
It does bring back bad memories. In his defence, he was saying he worked right through Christmas. This was his first planned leave for a while, seeing his family. He was back in London. But it does raise the question, why didn't he come back? He's saying that it was impossible to get back to Sudan once that fighting had broken out. But there are obviously questions, given the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly cut his trip to the Pacific short to come back and deal with this situation. What was the ambassador doing throughout all of this? He's saying that his deputy in Sudan was managing the operation and is now working 20-hour days from London, getting this all organised.
OK, well, before the ceasefire, 400 people had been killed in heavy fighting and shelling, particularly around the capital in Khartoum. One UN aid worker also killed, and a French Special Forces soldier was gravely injured yesterday. A very grave situation on the ground. Tom Harwood with that. Thank you.
And let's now move on to the latest hearing in Prince Harry's battle with the British press. It's today, with the Duke of Sussex suing the publisher of The Sun over allegations of phone hacking.
Well, let's cross live to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who is outside the High Court for us. Bring us up to speed on what the complaint is at the High Court.
Yeah, morning to both of you. This is the latest round in Prince Harry's war with the British press. Essentially, he is arguing, or he's claiming the allegation is that News Group newspapers hacked his voicemail and made payments to private investigators, around 100 payments to private investigators to obtain information about his personal life in the early 2000s, running headlines such as Chelsea's topless treat for Harry, Harry's mad night of lust, and so forth. He arguing that it had a big impact on his private life. He's seeking £200,000 in damages, although we know that for Prince Harry it's not really about the money. This is very much a personal vendetta against the British press. News Group newspapers deny all the allegations regarding paying private investigators and hacking voicemail. And their argument will be that because this claim was filed in 2019, because it relates to allegations in the early 2000s, that so much time has elapsed that it doesn't need to go to trial. Now, this is, of course, awkward for King Charles coming so close to the coronation. Awkward as well for Rebecca Brooks, the CEO of News UK, the parent company of News Group newspapers. She was editor of The Sun at the time. Now, she'd be forgiven for feeling nervous if it did go to trial, given what could emerge from that trial. And of course, Prince Harry in the past has described her as an infected pustule on the backside of humanity. So no love lost between those two. And of course, Rebecca Brooks cleared of phone hacking during a criminal trial in 2014. Criminal trials have a higher burden of proof and also involve juries. A civil trial would not. So the chances of Rebecca Brooks being convicted of something in that trial in a civil case could be greater. If the case does go ahead, then we'll go to trial in January. In terms of whether we're expecting Prince Harry to turn up today or not, we know that he was at a basketball match in the States last night, so it looks unlikely that he will turn up. But this case is also being heard alongside Hugh Grant as well, who's made allegations against News Group newspapers of phone hacking. as well. So we may see Hugh Grant here today, but it's less likely we'll see Prince Harry.
Okay.
Paul, appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. We'll keep you posted throughout the day on GB News as that hearing progresses. Some breaking news coming in on the grocery front.
Yes, some of you may use Ocado as your preferred online shopping organisation. They have announced plans to shut their, what they call customer fulfilment centre. We think that means sort of customer services. That's in Hatfield in Hertfordshire, and they say that will impact around 2,300 jobs. So that is the breaking news.
That's significant, isn't it?
Yeah, Ocado has decided to shut its customer fulfilment centre.
Why would you have 2,300 people working in customer services and it not impact your business to get rid of 2,300 people?
Well, they've said we are impacting. They're obviously being very careful with the wording, haven't decided to necessarily cut them, or maybe they'll move them within the organisation, or all of that has to go out to them if it's redundancy. But, yeah, there'll be a lot of worry from those 2,300 workers, won't there, about what the future is for them.
Honestly, what a lot of rubbish business talk.
Customer fulfilment centre.
Are you fulfilled? How fulfilled
Was
are
your
you?
Ocado shop? It is the posh one, isn't it, Ocado? It's sort of like...
Well, it's not. Is it not owned by Marks and Spencer, isn't it?
It used to be to do with Waitrose, didn't it? And now it's...
Yeah, I think Marks and Spencer then bought it.
It's the high-end delivery.
Well, anyway, it's not delivering on your customer fulfilment. On all of that. But no one listens to you anyway when it comes to customer
Well, if you're lucky if you can speak to anyone.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You hang on. I mean, the idea that, you know, you hang on. Somebody I knew yesterday who was phoning their dealership, their car dealership, to get the tyre changed because your car doesn't come with a spare tyre anymore. So they send someone out who puts on a half a tyre, and then that gets you to their showrooms, and then you change the tyre again. It's all a lot of nonsense. Why don't we have tyres anymore in our cars? Why don't we?
I don't know. You used to have them on the back of your car, didn't
spare
you?
wheel.
But yeah, I don't think any customers are being fulfilled anymore. That's a thing of the past, fulfilling customers.
My point was he gave up after 20 minutes hanging on the line,
Oh, really?
not getting an answer there with that. Over 8 million households will start receiving £301 cost of living support payment from the government today.
It comes as 1 in 5 parents admit that childcare costs are eating up more than half of their income.
Well, then don't have babies. I know we'll argue about that. It's a choice, often. And it's not always. OK, you're getting the look. The Chancellor's Spring Statement promotes parents. I'm telling you, a lot of people will agree with me. You know, you used to sit down as parents and you say, you know, it was a choice. Can we afford to have a child? Now it's everybody's right to have a child.
Well, you were a child once, weren't you?
Yes, but I thought I never had children. I never brought children into the world without thinking, can I afford to raise them?
Well, it's not that they can't afford to raise them, it's just that they can't afford to take time off work because they can't get childcare, and everybody has to have 2 people working to be able to afford their mortgages in the modern world.
They can't afford to raise them.
So no one will have children then, Eamonn?
I don't think it should be your God-given right to have children.
OK, well, we'll do this as a debate. I think we did do it a couple of weeks ago and you changed your view. We'll have to start again.
No. Let's see. I'll find it somewhere here as well. But there's bound to be somebody backing me up on this. But... yeah, no, I haven't changed my view on it. I've thought about that. I might have tried to be sound as if I was being reasonable on it at some stage, but I'm not really.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, the Chancellor's Spring Statement promised parents 15 hours free childcare per week, but care providers are
So the country's also broke, right? We're billions.
Yeah, by the way, that comes nowhere close to covering the childcare. It just helps with the payments.
Well, then there's things we've got to stop. There's things we've got to stop.
Like having children.
Sort of thing, like having children.
Okay.
That's we've got to stop.
That's going to be great for growth and GDP.
Paying for people to have children.
It's not paying for people to have children. It's enabling people to continue to go to work so that they can keep a roof over their house, over their head.
Don't have children. There's too much nookie going on in the country. That's what's going on. People are indulging their bodies to procreate. OK. Theo Chicumba has this story for you.
With the cost rising and childcare providers closing, parents like Kim from Rotherham are deciding to leave full-time work in order to look after their children, as they say it doesn't make financial sense for them to work.
We do pay for 2 mornings of childcare a week, which is right at the limit of what we can afford. My son has just turned 3, which means he should be eligible for 15 hours free childcare, but there's a cut-off. So because he wasn't 3 before the 1st of April, now means that we have to wait until September before we get any kind of government help.
It's not just having an impact on mothers' finances now, but it's affecting their career aspirations and long-term security.
I'm not currently building up my pension. There's a big gap in my CV, and nobody sets out, going to work, starting their university courses, thinking that that's going to be the position that they will find themselves in a few years' time. So the priority is obviously providing adequate childcare for our children and making sure that they have a happy, healthy home life. So that was the priority. And my professional career had to take a back seat.
A survey by Pregnant Then Screwed found that 1 in 4 parents who use formal childcare say the cost is now more than 75% of their take-home pay. The charity argues there's still a long way to go to level the playing field.
We know that for women, the pay penalty is about 45% when they have a child. For men, they tend to get pay rises and promotions. And that's not necessarily because men are being favoured in the workforce. It's because of all of these barriers that women tend to headbutt from the point that they have a baby, one of which is our extortionately expensive, inaccessible childcare system.
In order to see change, some mothers point at systems in other parts of the world which could help many in the UK.
When you look at other countries, like in Europe, for example, France, where they heavily subsidise their childcare systems, they're sending, it costs parents like €5 a day to send a child to school, compared to it would cost me £56 for a full day's childcare here in the UK, it's just not financially viable.
Many parents say there's still a lot to do to balance the scales to make work more accessible. As they argue, women are facing the greatest barriers to returning to work after having children. D.H. Comber, GB News.
Enter the debate on all of this. Let us know what you have to say.
But we're going to bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories with the time at 8:19. And more than 8 million households will start receiving a £301 cost of living support payment from the government from this morning. It is the first of 3 payments, which will total up to £900. That's for those eligible on benefits such as universal credit or pension credit.
The government is launching legal action against the Royal College of Nursing. They want to declare a planned strike in May, and the government wants to make it unlawful. RCN members in England are planning a 48-hour walkout from 8 p.m. at the start of the night shift on April 30th. This is a long-running dispute over pay.
British children are reading more books thanks to social media trends. Research from What Kids Are Reading has found platforms like TikTok are shaping new habits. Jeff Kinney, famous for the Wimpy Kids series, and David Walliams remain first and second most popular authors amongst primary school pupils, whilst J.K. Rowling remains popular in secondary.
Well, we'll do that. You know what I was going to say?
I don't know.
No, you do.
I actually don't.
Well,
if we're not going to do it, let's not do it. Oh yeah, I can't do that.
Can't say that.
No.
I can't say that word.
No, you can't say that word.
Say that word.
Naughty Eamonn.
But anyway, we will be discussing very shortly if former Spurs boss Mario Pochettino could be the man to take the reins at Chelsea. Well, Paul Coyte, who's a Spurs man, latest on this, next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, thank you, Chrissy. Chrissy, amongst hundreds, well, one tweet that's come to me. Eamonn, you are absolutely right. If you can't afford children, you shouldn't have them. If you can't afford to run a car, you don't have one. And you don't expect taxpayers then to fill it with petrol. Just want to reflect that. What else have we got coming up on the programme?
Well, we have at 8:45. We can find out how 2 Wrexham fans feel about the team's Hollywood ending as celebrities Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney carry the club up to League 2.
And you love this whole fairy story, don't you?
I can't stand football, and I love this Wrexham story. It's really captured my imagination, and it's terrible, but it's just, I've been seduced by the Hollywood gloss.
Well, it was quite a strong phrase to use. I can't stand football. Did you actually mean that? Would I be wasted inviting you to the Theatre of Dreams? Would that be a wasted invite? You mean you can't stand it? Oh, okay. After 9 o'clock, someone we can stand, former newspaper editor Eve Pollard, about Prince Harry back in court today. The newspapers, he hates them all. And it's now a phone hacking hearing against the publisher of The Sun that he's embarking on today.
And you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews.
Yes.
I was just going to say, put me on the spot. I feel a bit mean saying that. I could see Paul Coit's lovely face.
But you like him?
Well, yes, and I like people who are passionate about it, and I've got into Harry Kane thanks to you.
Yes.
Thanks to the World Cup, I got into Jack Grealish. So I do kind of get seduced by little stories along the way, but because I've never really followed a team, it just kind of passes me by. I don't understand.
What you meant to say is that you really love football.
That's what I meant to say, yeah. What I meant to say is probably I get jealous of the amount of time it takes away from,
From you.
Family life. From me, yeah. Yes.
Your husband's
that's
watching football instead of watching you.
Yes, that's it.
Maybe if you got a kit to wear. Maybe. Well.
Oh, yeah, we could sort that out.
I prefer the Quinciette, or whatever it was called, the Winciette.
Winciette. A Winciette football shirt.
Right, well, here's 3 headlines that Isabel will not be interested in.
Stop it.
Shambles, says the Mail. Tottenham sack acting head coach Stellini after them being just absolutely ripped apart by Newcastle 6-1. Former acting coach Ryan Mason will now take over. Times, it gets worse for Spurs. Chelsea, they are saying, they're reporting in advanced talks with the ex-Spurs boss, Mario Pochettino. How do you say? Is he Mauricio? Mauricio. And the ISIS security is to be stepped up at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, as there are fears protesters could interrupt the event. Be awful if somebody ran over them, wouldn't it, on the track? It would be awful if they glued themselves to the finish line and people just drove over them. Wouldn't it?
I don't know why you're laughing. Imagine if that happened.
Imagine them be all squashed all over. They would be squashed. They look like tomatoes that are squashed.
Eamonn.
I'm just saying, what an awful tragedy it would be.
Yeah.
Though all she did was go out to glue herself to the track. And a big Formula One car ran over her. Anyway, tell us, my friend. Right, Tottenham supporter and reporter on all things. Where are you at with who's in charge of your club? Who are you looking for? Stellini was only temporary. He's out. Ryan Mason, I presume he's only going to be temporary as well.
Do you remember the old comedy show Soap? Do you remember they used to go and they used to go and and they go and so-and-so's doing this with so-and-so and find out more in the next episode of Soap. This is what it's turning into, because it used to be a takeoff on the old soap operas, but it was a comedy. So if we look at what was happening there, we had a manager there that was in charge, Antonio Conte, who expected to be a winner, who came in. It didn't work out for him. He then goes on a rant against Spurs after a very bad result at Southampton, and then he makes his pretty much place untenable. He then decides to go. It's decided between them and the club. And then the amazing thing is that his team stay, but he goes, but the team that he brought in with him stay at Spurs, which is Christian Stellini, who was his number 2. So Christian Stellini steps up. Now, Christian Stellini did step up a few weeks before Antonio did leave, because he was ill and he was at home in Italy. So Christian Stellini oversaw...
wasn't it?
It was the gallbladder. So he oversaw Spurs win against Manchester City. So you're thinking, well, this could be the guy. They seemed very happy. They seemed good. So then once we've lost Antonio Conte, Stellini steps up, but then things don't really work out too well. Newcastle, it's a disaster, and then something has to be done.
But I tell you, the players have got to take some responsibility for this as well.
Yeah, of course they do. I mean, if you look at the way the players were playing, and then there was the big speech that Antonio Conte did, and he's laying the blame at the players and saying, I can't work with them, and they're not showing this, and they're not showing passion, and there's nothing in them. And, that's what you could easily aim of what we saw against Newcastle, because it was a very, very bad performance.
Right.
So Stellini is, whether he's the fall guy, you feel sorry for him, he's not a experienced manager in any way, but it looked like he was...
How would Spurs react, or Spurs supporters react, if Pochettino goes to Chelsea?
Now, there's ways of looking at this. You'd obviously be heartbroken, because he's a great love of Spurs fans. Took Spurs, turned things around to the Champions League, and even to the Champions League final. Then it went a little on the slide, and then he went, and then he was fired. So now Pochettino's gone, he's been to PSG, but still there's a great love between Spurs fans and Pochettino. So it is heartbreaking to see him go to Chelsea, but also he wasn't wanted back at Spurs. So you cannot begrudge the man to be going over. I think Arsenal would be one thing, but if he goes to Chelsea, I think, Spurs fans have got to realise that, what are you going to do? You're a professional in what you do, and if a big club comes calling, you're not exactly going to...
Bottom line, Spurs have got to get into the top 4, and that's the outside chance. It looks as though that 4th place will go between Newcastle or Manchester United. So the 1 and 2 will be Arsenal or Man City, and we're building up to that on Wednesday.
Yeah, we're building up to that Wednesday. I mean, there's other games tonight. It's Wolves, Palace and Villa, who are looking also very good, could go into 5th. And
These are 6-pointers, these games, aren't they?
They are 6-pointers. Leeds and Leicester, 16th Leeds with 29 points, 17th Leicester with 28, so that's a huge game. But like you say, the biggest one of the season is Arsenal-Man City. There's a lot of Arsenal fans. They're very down about the whole situation. They feel as if it's blown. You know, there was the terrible result against Southampton on Friday night. Man City need a draw for it to be in their hands. But if Arsenal win the game tomorrow night,
it's
in their hands.
It's in their hands.
So it ain't over
What
yet.
is it? The Spurs have a game in hand, and if they win that, they'll go 1 point in the lead. I think
Spurs slightly behind, but yeah.
Sorry,
we talking
Arsenal,
about Man City? Yeah,
Man City. Sorry.
So it is just extremely tight. But really, you could look at it and say the season hinges on what's going to happen tomorrow night. That's a huge game.
Silverstone, the Formula One Grand Prix, which I think is in July.
Yeah, it's not for a while.
So again, they're worried after all of these protests at the Grand National and the World Snooker and things.
Of course they are. I mean, as every major sporting event is going to be over the next year. If we're looking at Wimbledon, we could be looking at the Ashes. We look at everything. I think it's just Silverstone saying, well, hang on. What are we going to do? How are we going to keep this back? Because we're talking about 150,000 people are going to be there. And like you say, it doesn't get much more dangerous than someone gluing themselves on a track at a Formula One race. So they're talking about that now and how they're going to deal with it. But maybe the answer is try and get Hugh Braysher, who did a great job with the London Marathon. OK, the argument was a bit different to say it's a celebration of life and very environmentally friendly, but he managed to keep everybody away. Formula One's probably a different kettle of fish altogether, but they're worried about it, obviously.
Paul, got to break off here because such is the volume of calls supporting me saying that people shouldn't have children unless they can afford them. Terry says, people now have children and then expect the taxpayer to pay for them. Charles Nottingham says, I agree with Eamonn once again. If you can't afford children, and that includes childcare, then don't have them.
Oh, I'm trying very hard to stay calm.
Here's another one. Eamonn's right. You shouldn't have children if you can't afford them.
Let me guess, are they all men that all of these thoughts are coming from? Can I just come back with the alternative argument in all of this? Right, experts have said that this reform would have greater impact on GDP than any other measure since 2010, which is growth in this country.
Journalistic and everything. And
GDP is gross domestic product, is essentially how much money you make at the end of the day in this country.
Well,
we have a labour shortage.
You'll then be paying to somebody who wants to be a baby machine.
You're not paying somebody who wants to be a baby machine. You're enabling women, predominantly, to not lose 3 years of their career and to be able to go back to work after 9 months or so because the cost of childcare in this country is disproportionate. Why should intelligent or indeed capable, skilled women not be able to go back to work? Childcare is too expensive. That's the problem. It's not the fact that people are having children.
Well, there wouldn't be childcare if people didn't have children. So just don't have children.
Oh, it's a silly argument, if I may say respectfully.
It's not a silly argument.
No, because we know that we have
it's insulting
a decline.
To people who are saying they're out there.
I think you're being quite insulting.
I'm not. They're working. They're out there. They're slaving away, and you're saying we'll have some of your pay.
Women leaving the workforce has
children.
Increased for the first time in decades as a result of the costs in childcare.
Don't have children. Stay at your job.
I just can't believe we're having this conversation in 2023. Quite honestly, cannot believe we're having this conversation.
Isabel, somebody has to pay for it. Somebody has to pay for it. I'm only putting the argument out there. It just doesn't happen. You just can't go out and say, it is my right to have children.
Yeah, but guess what? We'll bring more to the economy than we'll take out of it by enabling women to stay in the workforce. We have a shortage of people in the workforce.
What were your figures today?
110,000 more people would be able to go back in.
We haven't got the country's
so allow people to go back to work. Allow us to earn money and bring money into the economy and pay taxes for it as well. Goodness me, these people will be paying their taxes.
Well, there's the argument. What way do you stand on it? gbviews@gbnews.uk. Please stay with us and we'll be discussing Iranian women defying the country's crackdown on hijabs. We'll hear the thoughts of Norman Baker and Emily Carver, all of that, and we'll ask them about babies maybe as well next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Just reading the Twitter inbox. Lots of people getting in touch. Anyway, I think we've moved on from that debate.
More agreeing with me, dear.
No, not
It's embarrassing.
actually.
It's embarrassing now.
I'm so with you on your recent exchange with Eamonn on childcare and women returning to work. How you applied your feedback was very respectful. And the other one said, I completely agree with you about women staying in the workplace and having a family. Wasn't there an article about birth rates going down and the pension age going up as a result? Children are an investment in the future. What do you think about that, Norman?
Well, they are an investment in the future, and the fact is that we do have an ageing population, and because we've got fewer people coming into the country now, and we got more old people than young people, there is a real pressure on the economy as a consequence of that, and it does mean that it's just a challenge for the government to make the sums add up.
Well, in that argument, why don't you let all the migrants in then?
Well, there is an argument about that. The fact of the matter is that most migrants who were here were actually men who were working and contributing to the economy, and they're now all gone, which is why we've got gaps and we've got fruit not being picked in the fields and so on.
Absolute nonsense. Fact check there. We had 1.1 million visas given out last year. Come on. We've hardly lifted up the drawbridge, have we?
Well, we have lifted up the drawbridge. We've now had to try and retrofit people into the country to make up for the gaps.
Anyway, more babies are needed.
Do you think so?
I think so. We're not replacing ourselves, which can't be a good thing. And so many people my age, I doubt will ever have children.
And do you think that childcare reforms are an absolutely outrage to the taxpayer because they'd be allowing 30 hours of free childcare.
I think they need to focus on how they can make it cheaper, whether that's, staff to child ratios, whether that's getting rid of some of this, very specific curriculum for 2-year-olds, making it a bit cheaper. I think most women just want a childminder,
to work,
basically, a childminder. But yes.
Norman, let's keep the subject with women in Iran. What's going on there?
I think if we're worried about how women are treated in this country, we need to think about Iran as well, because it's much, much worse over there. And the police have actually tightened even more than they had done before now, with new hijab laws in public places, where punishments now for women for not wearing the hijab properly include steep fines, a ban on driving or accessing the internet. And women who do not wear hijabs are now prohibited from entering government offices, universities, schools, subway stations and police stations. So the last one might be quite welcome to them, I suppose, in that situation. But it's quite appalling, really. They've been targeted, one woman here in the paper, with tear gas, arrested, humiliated, but I still don't want to cover my hair. Their final weapon is execution, but I'm ready for the ultimate punishment. Just because she won't wear a hijab, it's appalling.
It's so
but apparently
sad.
men are being targeted as well. There's a man being stopped and fined for having long hair while driving.
It's so sad because Iran was a relatively liberal place for women for a long time. There were none of these strict rules on clothing, and now it's just... I wouldn't want to be a woman in Iran, that's for sure.
No.
Who would have the courage to defy the regime?
Well, they do, don't they? They are defying the regime, and that's a tremendous courage for these women to stand up and do that, and continually be arrested, subject to tear gas, everything else, but they still do it because they want to assert their right to dress as they want, and why shouldn't they?
Emily, let's go to the Times, page
Norman's
4.
exercising his right to dress how he likes.
Precisely.
We should point out, anyone listening on the radio, Norman's wearing a very bright but very lovely purple suit.
And matching shirt, tie and socks.
I was trying to think what political party that relates to, but it can only be the monster raving...
No.
Oh, no, is it UKIP?
Oh, it's a bit of UKIP in there. Oh, dear, that wouldn't be your natural home.
No, it wouldn't be. No, quite right.
Half of doctors...
royal colour.
Half of doctors tempted overseas are unlikely and unwilling to return, says The Times.
Yes, this is not a good news story by any means. 4,843 doctors moved abroad to practice medicine last year alone. Of those, 59% unwilling and unlikely to return, only 24% likely, 10% don't know, 7% want to but unlikely. We've clearly got, as you said in the break, a brain drain of doctors from this country. Yes, we have lots of foreign doctors coming to our country, but it seems that we are, more are leaving at this point, and this is not a good thing. And of course, pay, working conditions, the system of the NHS, the fact that you can be paid more in places like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, are to blame for this.
Yeah, they've got a better cost of living down under as well, haven't they? My doctor best friend from school, who I miss sorely, has taken her NHS skills. Such a shame.
Yes, well, people move around for the best income and the best quality of life. And that's just why we lose doctors here, but we also get doctors coming in because our conditions are better than some other countries.
But we cap the number of doctors that we train at 7,500.
Yeah.
Labour want to double that.
Well, I mean, it's ridiculous to have a cap on it.
It seems silly to import talent from overseas.
It does.
It's very expensive, I suppose, to train doctors. That's the reason that they cap.
Well, it is, but there's a shortage of doctors, so why have a cap on it? It's nonsensical.
Wasn't it the BMA itself that lobbied for that cap because they wanted to keep it elite? That's what I read anyway. So I think it was actually a massive mistake from not only government but from the doctors' unions.
But I know Isabel's saying it's very expensive to train doctors, but if you're paying for your university degree, it's only expensive to those undertaking the course, is it not?
Well, I think they don't take out loans on student fees. It costs more to train them than they pay in student fees, essentially. If you do a history or sociology degree, you're paying, above the amount that it probably costs. But for doctors, they're paying below. So they get it. But they have huge, huge, huge loans to pay back now. And if they go to Australia, then they don't have to.
Norman, where should we go? A cruise ship stored a dead grandfather's body in a drinks cooler when a ship's morgue broke down. This is the stuff of nightmares in
Well,
Metro.
it is the stuff of nightmares. I'm sorry to anyone who's not had breakfast yet, who's watching or listening to the programme this morning, but it is quite an astonishing story. This is the celebrity cruises, they're called, perhaps misnamed, US cruise company, whose morgue broke down, and they stored a dead grandfather's body in a drinks cooler after he'd had a heart attack, and left him there for several days. And when he was found, eventually he turned green. It's not exactly a
but
nice
it would
story.
have been worse if he hadn't have been in the drinks cooler.
The question is, did they clear the drinks out first?
Yeah, the drinks were out. Well, some of them were taken out and some were still there.
Oh no! So imagine being served a drink that had been.
Well, imagine dying on a cruise ship. A lot of people
that's scary,
do.
isn't it?
A lot of people do.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
David Frost died on a cruise ship.
Oh.
Yeah.
I got one of those ferries across the Bay of Biscay, which, let me tell you, is pretty scary. And we were all really seasick, and someone got airlifted off the deck because they'd had something wrong, and that was pretty dramatic.
The Bay of Biscay, whether you're flying or whether you're sailing through it, is one choppy area.
The ship, whatever it was, the huge ferry was doing that, and then the helicopter was trying to move with the boat and lift a...
Oh, yeah.
It was unforgettable.
Gosh,
Stick to canal boats.
Right, let's talk about Generation Z. More than a third of Generation Z, whatever it is, want the monarchy to be established, according to a new poll. The Telegraph reporting this.
We have a miserable bunch of 18 to 24-year-olds who want to abolish the monarchy. Of course, that means that two-thirds or around two-thirds are either not sure or want to keep it. But it's hardly surprising, really, that young people feel this way. It seems that constantly what they're fed is negative about British history, negative about the monarchy. Of course, people were supportive of Meghan Markle, young people were, so of course they see the royal family as being a racist, outdated institution, and this stuff is constant on social media. And they're being fed this narrative that the monarchy is a waste of money and that it's backward and doesn't fit contemporary society. So there you go.
What do you think, Norman?
Well, can I say, first of all, as a British person, it's Generation Z, in my view, rather than Generation Z. But secondly, the number of young people... I mean, it's a serious thing for the royal family, because the polls show that more 18 to 24-year-olds don't want the monarchy than do. There's a lot of don't knows, but the majority, if you want to take it in those terms, don't want it. And the support for the monarchy diminishes now as people get younger. So the most supportive of the monarchy are those above 75, the least supportive are the youngest, and it's down that channel. And the support overall has dropped from 75% when the Queen was on the throne to 57 or 58% now, which is still a majority, of course, but it's going down. And I do think that the fact is that Charles has a challenge in his hands. He hasn't got the automatic respect his mother had over all those years. He's got to create that himself. And the monarchy is, in some ways, a bit out of date. And also, if you look at the financial arrangements of the monarchy, they're pretty indefensible, to be perfectly frank with you. The monarchy in this country costs way in excess of the monarchy in any other European country. So they've got to actually deal with that point.
I'm not sure that would make them more popular, though.
Well, I
think it's more about historical links, you know, things when we're talking about slavery links and the fact that people are saying that the royal family is racist. And these are sorts of things that 18 to 24-year-olds feel very passionately about.
OK, well, thank you both for feeling so passionate about the stories in the papers today, Norman and Emily. Appreciate it. Come back and see us again sometime. Thank you. We're now going to Wrexham, and the football club there have officially been promoted to League Two. Well done to them. After a Hollywood ending to the season, which happened over the weekend.
Yeah, among those celebrating with the club's relatively new co-owners, the Hollywood star Ryan Reynolds and star of small screen Rob McElhenney.
OK, well, this morning we're joined by lifelong Wrexham fans, Kevin Jones, Danny McCreath, who are still on a high after winning the weekend. Celebrations must have been good, lads.
Tremendous, Eamonn. Tremendous, Eamonn.
Where did you watch the game?
At the ground itself, in the stands.
And were you one of those people that flooded onto the pitch at the end?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely were, yeah. We don't get banned for that, but... Oh, there you go.
That's absolutely fantastic. Just describe what that moment meant, because for people who haven't watched the documentary, there's this kind of American injection and interest in the club. They've chosen this stadium, which has got all these lovely historical links. I think it's the oldest football stadium, international stadium in the world. And, you know, they love the British football system because there is this sort of pyramid, this promotion opportunity, and they've only gone and done it.
Yeah, well, I remember 15 years ago when we went to Lincoln, and we all got dressed up in fancy dress, and it was the last game of the season. We were already down, and we thought, well, we'll only be a year or 2 years max. And then the first game of the season, we won 5-0 in the league, and I thought, right, we're definitely going up this year. But predictions, I get wrong. So it's 15 years later. So yeah, it's tremendous.
You know, lads, from my point of view, my memories of Wrexham are Mickey Thomas and his association with your club. Is it true you nearly went out of business in the past 10 years or so?
Yes, there was fans raising up money because I think we were 12 hours away from actually going out of business. People were putting the houses on the market, remortgaging. There was young kids with pocket money just turning up at the football club. So that's a long way off now, long way ago now, because I don't think we'll be doing that for much ever again.
But if this, the way things have turned out, if this was part of a TV programme or a film, you just wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe what happened. And when Rob and Ryan came along, what was your initial reaction? You couldn't have just believed. I mean, like all owners, people are cynical about whoever your owners are. And you couldn't have just been lying back and saying, salvation, here it comes.
No, it was weird because there was all these rumours saying that we'd have actors buying the club and whatever. But since the start, these two, Rob and Ryan, have the passion they're showing, but not just the club, for the whole community. The togetherness, it's brung the whole town. We walk around Wrexham now, and the amount of Americans, Canadians, Australians just coming to our little town, and it is bizarre. Eamonn, I'm not being funny. I still can't believe it. I still can't believe that we've gone up and whatever's happened now. It is like a dream come true, massive dream. And
has it changed? Yeah, absolutely fair play to them. And do you think it's changed Wrexham as a town, not just a football club?
Oh yes, definitely a town. It's completely. We were in the doldrums, you know. The football club was dying, the town was dying, and then all of a sudden these two have just come in, and they've just lifted everything. You know, you walk through the town now, and everyone's got a smile on their face. They're all laughing and joking with their Wrexham tops on. Everyone's talking about Ryan and Rob.
It's the kids. The kids, 2 years, 3 years ago, did have Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, all them Everton tops on. And now there's just Wrexham everywhere. Every top's Wrexham. It's just honest. It's for the young kids today, it's absolutely tremendous for them. Their future is bright. Yeah. I mean bright, because these two ain't going anywhere for years. They're staying here.
They'll see proper football now, they will. Not like us.
They will. My little team, I mean, we've just got to the FA Cup final on Sunday on penalties, but, you know, I understand your love and desire, and pretty soon Manchester will be red once again, which I look forward to. Boys, I was...
in a few years' time.
You might well do.
We'll be playing in the FA Cup final.
I'll see you there. I was only in Wrexham once, and it was at the local leisure centre to an election count. So it was, and it's all I saw, the inside of the gymnasium and all that sort of thing in the hall. But I look forward to going back, hopefully at a football match, and see you there and just feel how everyone is experiencing this and celebrating it.
Well, anytime, Eamonn.
Come for the pint. Come with us and we'll show you around the town.
That's a game I would be up for going to, you know. I would be up for that.
Mightn't be invited.
No, well...
What is he saying? What's he saying? Yeah, sorry. So what were you saying? Didn't hear you there.
So, well, you're more than welcome to come up, Eamonn. You've got my number now, GB News. So give us a bell and we'll show you around the town.
Careful what you wish for. We'll be there. We'll be there.
Ryan, thank you very much indeed, lads. Very good to see you. Kevin and Danny, thank you both very, very much indeed. Thank you. Well done, Wrexham.
Yeah.
So, we'll take a break back after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister announces a large-scale evacuation of British nationals as factions in Sudan agree a 3-day ceasefire.
Very nice to see you, whether you're watching or listening. The time is 9 o'clock, Tuesday the 25th of April. You're very welcome to breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister says the government's mobilising RAF flights for a large-scale evacuation of British passport holders. In a statement, he says the most vulnerable, including children and the elderly, will be prioritised.
It comes amid growing criticism that the UK hasn't acted fast enough on rescuing those stranded by the fighting, as it's revealed the ambassador to Sudan was on holiday when the violence broke out.
Rishi Sunak has pledged his support for a campaign to protect women's rights launched by Labour and Conservative MPs. Writing in the Express, the father of 2 daughters vowed to protect single-sex spaces.
Low-income households are starting to receive the latest cost of living payment from the government and continued high inflation. 8 million people, including those in universal credit, should receive £301 from today.
And the latest hearing in Prince Harry's battle with the press takes place today. The Duke of Sussex is suing Rupert Murdoch's News Group newspapers over allegations of phone hacking.
You've been very good getting in touch with us. Keep on doing it. We're here to receive what you have to say.
To our top story this hour, and in the last 60 minutes, the Prime Minister has confirmed that the government's coordinating an evacuation of British passport holders from Sudan.
Now, this follows on from last night's announcement of a 72-hour ceasefire between the two warring factions.
Earlier, we spoke to a British Durham University student whose mother was visiting Sudan when the fighting broke out.
Every time I contact him, the situation just gets worse and worse and worse, and I have to keep travelling around the country in order to find refuge and to find safety. Like, these are people that they're mothers, they're hard workers, they're people in the UK. Like, my younger brother and sister, they depend on my mother to come back and help them. They're struggling. I think it's absolutely awful what they're doing with government. You're very easily and successfully able to get out the diplomats. Why can't you get out the citizens?
OK, this is the conundrum with the whole of this. I mean, people who are stranded there, it's a massive country as well. Newspaper editor Eve Pollard is with us. There's a lot been made of the British ambassador not being in the country, which I think is very unfair. He left the country during Eid. I don't know what difference it would have made if he was there or not anyway. But what do you make of the way the government is handling this situation?
I think it's very difficult because other countries have got far fewer people there. We've got 4,000 people there. Let us hope they took advantage of the 72-hour ceasefire and thought, let's act now. Let's hope that we hear later on today they're on this boat on the way home. It's always very easy to criticise people in this situation. And, of course, the people we have there are not all in Khartoum. So it's quite complicated to gather them all up. It must be the most scary situation.
Yeah, and obviously it's ongoing, isn't it? And you can have an inquest into whether intelligence was ignored at a later date. But at the moment, all we know is that there was this amazing SAS recovery operation over cover of darkness on Saturday night. And there will be military personnel risking their lives today to try and assist British citizens.
Yeah, and of course there are a lot of NHS doctors in Khartoum. Why? And we want them back. Why? That's a very good question. I think we'll answer that when they're home. OK. But they may have gone there for all sorts of reasons, like the NHS is in an impossible situation here, and maybe in Khartoum they can just get on with doing their job.
But this is why people keep saying there are NHS doctors there. Are there not just doctors there who are from Britain, as opposed to... It sounds as if they're working for the NHS there. That's what I'm sort of trying to
That's true. There have been doctors who've been trained in Britain.
Yes.
And we'd like them to stay here and look after us. But we understand some people want to travel.
Well, we're keeping our close eye on those developments, and as the Foreign Secretary is speaking to the media, we hope to bring people that just as soon as we can. But the Prime Minister also confirming today that this huge operation is underway and that children and the elderly will be prioritised.
Yeah, that sounds at least they are on top of this. And apparently the ambassador, who was on holiday here, he said he hadn't seen his mother for weeks. He went away, as you say, during Eid. Let's hope that we hear that they're all on their way.
OK. Well, look, the Prime Minister has announced that British citizens are to be evacuated following agreement on this ceasefire that Eve was talking about there. The Foreign Secretary has been speaking in the past few moments. This is what he had to say.
The last few days, we have been doing extensive planning across government departments and with our international partners to take advantage of any improvement in the situation and begin the evacuation of British nationals in Sudan. I'm very pleased that a ceasefire has been announced by the leadership of the factions on the ground, and therefore we are initiating an evacuation plan. It is important to remember that ceasefires have been announced and have fallen apart in the past, so the situation remains dangerous, volatile and unpredictable. I've spoken either directly or through intermediaries with the leaders of the factions on the ground, calling for them to allow British nationals, dual nationals and minors to be evacuated, and we will continue to push for the maintenance of this ceasefire. Of course, it is impossible for us to predict how long this opportunity will last, and we're calling people forward in priority order based on their vulnerability.
We've heard a lot in the past couple of days about how dangerous the situation in Sudan is. How are people going to get to this airfield safely?
Well, the truth is that we cannot predict how the situation on the ground will develop. The conflict has, as I say, been unpredictable, it's been volatile. We have said that we are unable to provide escorts from where British nationals are to the airhead. They will have to make their own way there, as indeed has been the case for the nationals of other countries. We will maintain this airhead for as long as we can, but the situation does remain, as I say, dangerous and volatile.
That sounds like it's going to be still risky for people to make their way to the airport. Do you accept that, and how quickly do you want to get this done as a result?
Well, we are working as quickly as possible. Obviously, the UK is not the only country seeking to evacuate its nationals, and we are doing this evacuation in close coordination with our international partners. This is an active conflict. The ceasefire has been announced, but we know that there have been pockets of violence in the past, even within previous ceasefires. So this does remain dangerous, this does remain difficult. We are providing what assistance that we can, and we are operating as quickly as we can.
We saw what happened in Afghanistan, where there was a rush on Kabul airport. How worried are you that that could happen again, and do you have plans in place to prevent that?
Well, this situation is fundamentally different to the situation in Afghanistan. We have established contact with a number of British nationals, and we are talking where we can directly with them, although we recognise our ability to maintain consistent communications is difficult because of the conflict. We are prioritising calling forward the most vulnerable, the young, the old, those who are unwell or who are injured, and we will make contact with them directly. As I say, we want to maintain this ceasefire as long as possible. We want to maximise the number of British nationals that we help, but this does remain an unpredictable and dangerous circumstance.
A lot of people will be wondering this morning why you didn't do this sooner. Other countries have been taking people out of Sudan a lot earlier than the UK. Have you waited too long?
Well, the circumstances for each individual nation are different. There are considerably more British nationals in Sudan than other countries have got. We've been working closely with our international partners, and we have facilitated the evacuation of a number of British nationals already. We will continue to work with our international partners. We will continue to push for a maintenance of this ceasefire with the generals commanding the troops in Sudan, and I will continue my direct engagement with them to make sure that the British nationals who need to be evacuated are facilitated to the airhead and ultimately out of Sudan.
And finally, how confident are you that all the Brits who want to get out of Sudan will get out? Are you looking at other options, for example, in Port Sudan?
We have always maintained a range of options for evacuation. It is impossible to predict how long the ceasefire will last. It's impossible to predict how long any other route to evacuation will remain open. We will continue to push the leadership in Sudan to maintain this ceasefire, to facilitate the evacuation of British nationals. That is something we will do both directly and with our international partners. But at this stage, it's not possible for us to predict with any certainty at all the circumstances on the ground in Sudan.
All right, Foreign Secretary, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cleverly there. Eve Pollard still with us. It's going to be a big court case in London today. It kicks off today. Prince Harry taking on the Sun newspaper this time. He could have his pick from many of them, but he says that he believes his phones were tapped and hacked and his life very badly intruded in and affected as a result.
It's funny that Rupert's newspapers are very useful when you want to sell your book. I mean, it seems to me that Harry is in a dichotomy here. He wants publicity. He loves publicity. Publicity is the oxygen which makes the money that makes the world go round in their world. And he's having a go. I disapprove of phone hacking, but I think he's going to have to prove very strongly that people knew only from his phone what he was doing. And a lot of these court cases have taken place already. It seems very late to be coming to this party. We'll see. There's 4 days more hearing. We'll see what more comes out.
I agree with you, Reid, the timing. I mean, we're talking really historical stuff here. The world has moved on. His life has moved on. I don't know if he needs the money or he just wants to settle a score. But, I mean, the Queen's mantra was, don't complain, never explain.
Correct.
And
how well it suited the whole royal family, and particularly her.
But not him.
Not him. No, he loves publicity. They both love publicity. I mean, you know, the South Fork joke was wonderful. You know, let's have a world of no publicity, then off they go. I can imagine it would drive you mad if you discovered that your phone was being listened to and you realised stories are coming out. And hacking was wrong. But it just seems very late on. And it will be interesting to see what the court case produces and what new evidence they produce, saying we should have been part of that group that was going for newspapers before.
OK. Look, let's hear from Andrew and Beverly. They're to the point at 9:30 this morning. Guys, what are you doing?
Well, we're going to Khartoum. We're going to talk to some people who are there to get the latest. And of course, this is a great muddle, isn't it? Has the British government been too slow again? A bit like Kabul. I think it's a more nuanced situation, though. And also, we're talking about Rishi Sunak says he knows what a woman is. And he's written a big piece in the Express about that. Who's he getting at, then?
But his solution to know what a woman is to keep us safe with more CCTV. All routes always seem to inevitably lead that direction with him, don't they?
But how do you feel about this? Do you feel any more protected that the Prime Minister's come out and said, you know, he's on the side of women who are born, women in this?
Yes, I think it shows that he is tapping into, I think, what the majority of people think in this country, finally, and that's quite reassuring. He's going to obviously upset some of the trans activists who believe that there is some nuance in this debate. But he's arguing, isn't he, for safe spaces, and that I am on board with, yeah.
And what else have you got coming up?
We're also talking about the head teacher who committed suicide after the Ofsted report. We're talking about some people saying Ofsted's not fit for purpose. We've got an interview with somebody, a former head teacher. That, again, is a much more layered, nuanced situation than just to say somebody took their own life because there was an bad school report.
And Harry in court, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Except we won't see him.
Well, we might. You never know.
No, well, he was in LA last night.
Oh, right. Okay.
Wasn't he making money or being filmed somewhere? I mean, it's interesting what Eve was saying about this, because even I have veteran newspaper people. This guy needs to be in the news. He needs to be in the headlines because Netflix need him to be relevant. Yeah. And they have been sinking without trace in the United States. Their popularity now, not much better than the Duke of York.
Did you see Meghan on the TED Talk yesterday? She looked unrecognisable, I thought.
New hairdo,
apparently. Recognise her at all, yeah.
Oh, what's she done?
Well, she was very straight and it was quite a sort of strong...
And she's trying to say she's moved on from all this race row stuff that she caused, by the way, when she did the interview with Oprah Winfrey. So she's moved on from it.
Yeah. But I'm very much...
I never get over Oprah, that feigned acting.
Oh,
yeah.
What? They want to know if your baby might be more black than white.
Yeah.
It was pathetic. And, of course, we still never found out the name of the royal who may or may not have said that. And anyway, so what if they did? It's not racist.
But we are starting, as we said, we're starting with somebody who is a Sudanese national in that country. They can't be filmed. We're going to talk to them on the phone and find out exactly what's happening there.
OK, guys, thank you very much indeed. And we'll be back. Lots more to talk to Eve Pollard about right after this short break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, it's 9:19. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories.
More than 8 million households will start receiving a £301 cost of living support payment from the government today. It's the first of 3 payments. They'll total up to £900 for those eligible on benefits such as universal credit or pension credit.
The government's launching legal action against the Royal College of Nursing in an attempt to declare a planned strike in May unlawful. RCN members in England are planning a 48-hour walkout from 8 p.m. at the start of the night shift on April the 30th in a long-running dispute over pay.
Over 17 million trips could be made over this bank holiday weekend. The RAC has warned road congestion is expected to be worse than for the weekend after, the coronation weekend.
Now, the Prime Minister, like Yves Pollard, is a parent to daughters, and he's written in the Express today, pledging his support for women. What did you make of what he's written?
I thought it was excellent. I think, first of all, he says he knows what a woman is. That's rather refreshing, isn't it? And he's saying that women have to have personal spaces. We're looking for only women wards. We're looking for only women loos. We're looking for all the things we've been used to, because there's certain things as a woman that you don't want to share with a bloke under any circumstances. Doesn't care whether he's trans, straight, whatever. Women like their own personal space. He's got 2 small daughters, says it's very personal, very important.
But where does this leave these trans people? They're wanted nowhere. They're not wanted in the men's changing area. They're not wanted in the women's changing area.
I think they are wanted in the men's changing area.
So
that's what's happened so far.
If they identify as a woman and they dress as a woman.
I think if you've had the complete change to being a woman, then that's a different situation where, frankly, all of your body, and I feel great sympathy for people who feel they're born with the wrong sex, as it were. But so many of the trans people have had a little bit done here and a little bit done there, but they're still men. let's not go into details. It's breakfast.
Do you feel worried? Do you feel threatened? Do you ever think about this, or do you think it's not really relevant to your world?
It's only relevant to your world when you go to a theatre or you go to a cinema or you go to a health farm and you discover there are, you know, mass changing rooms. Nobody really wants to see this body anymore, not particularly me.
That's not the
but, I
point.
mean, you certainly don't want a bloke across the room. And also, blokes are less tidy, less clean, less...
Who? Men?
Men! Men!
Isabel, would you agree?
Well, you know my views.
OK, let's talk about Diane Abbott now, and as regards what she deems to be racial discrimination or not.
I think once a Corbynista, always a Corbynista. I think when she says her excuse for writing that stuff, which is Irish people, travellers and Jewish people suffer from less racism or don't suffer from it all their lives, how could she have written that sentence? Even if she said, I sent it and it was wrong, that sentence is inherently wrong. We are now in this country taking aboard the fact that there has been very, very bad relationships in some cases. There has been all sorts of problems in the past. We're doing our level best. And then along comes this woman and just blows the whole thing up. I'm afraid, if you are Jewish, I am Jewish, nominally Jewish, you have suffered from racism. Not to mention 6 million killed in the last war. Everybody forgets that, but actually there is anti-Semitism. I think that Irish people may have trouble in some parts of the world, and travellers do. And some of it has got to be because people like Diane Abbott keep going on about it.
Could I say to you, obviously being Irish and knowing what religious discrimination is like, I'm playing devil's advocate in her defence. The one thing I identify with is the discrimination a black person suffers. People can tell my religion from my name, from the school that I went to, from the area that I lived in. But with a black person, it's with them all the time.
Sure.
You can't escape, you can't go to a function, whatever. It's there all the time. Was that not what she was simply trying to say, cack-handedly?
But what is she saying? That racism is worse than the other racism?
Yes.
All racism is bad.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to make very clear now.
And I suppose, you know, the fact that she's made an apology, you can't accept that based on the fact she even thought or wrote those words.
In the first place.
That's what upsets me. The fact that she says, I sent the wrong piece of paper. That piece of paper should never have existed.
Right. Now, we've been talking about vegetarianism today, and we've been talking about a restaurant chain not taking steak off its menu, right, because it's a healthier option, it's good for the planet's carbon footprint. You've got a cautionary tale to tell.
Well, first of all, I want to say I admire Oaxaca, and I love that Mexican food. I haven't had it for about 2 years because my husband doesn't like this. Have I got things wrong in my life? I have. But in the meantime, I have a friend who has bowel cancer. He's had it for 3.5 years. He goes to a world-famous hospital for treatment in this country, and he was told by the doctor, we're going to give you a break now. We're not going to have chemotherapy for the next few weeks. We want you to build your strength up and get as healthy as you can. And he said, oh, that's OK, because I've been a vegetarian for 40 years. The doctor said, sit down. He said, when you leave this office, I want you to go to a butcher. I want you to buy fillet steak. I want you to have at least one a week. Because you are not getting certain amino acids if you don't. And I hope nutritionists and doctors who know about the treatment of things like cancer or anything say to people, we are carnivores. This is what we have been all our lives as humans. We're all human here. Some of us less than others. Won't talk about that. But the fact is, it's really important that you have some meat. We all eat less meat. That's good. We eat more fish. We eat more vegetables. That's excellent. But in fact, you've got to have some red meat in your diet. And the fact that this exponentially genius professor told him this, and when he got married recently, he said, I can't believe I'm married again, and I can't believe I'm not a vegetarian. He'd been a vegetarian all his life, didn't want to kill animals, wanted to do the right thing.
Do the right thing. What about doing the right thing with the emergency, climate crisis? As well, people will say to you, it's not about us as individuals, we've got to think about the planet, therefore stop eating meat?
Well, number one, we do have to think about the planet, but Britain only produces 1%. I mean, I think of the carbon thing. And secondly, we eat cheese. Cows are necessary for cheese.
Well, this is true. Where do you draw the line? We all have to be vegans.
I mean, this is crazy. Yeah, being vegan must be fun. I mean, this is a crazy situation. We have to actually probably look after the animals. We have to make sure that they produce as much as they can.
Yeah.
But just dropping everything.
Well, Eve, you talk a lot of sense. We could listen to you all morning, but we do have to say goodbye to you, and we have to say goodbye to our lovely viewers and listeners as well.
OK, please do join us again. We'll be back from 6 a.m. in the morning. Have yourselves a good day, whatever you're up to. Up next, Bev and Andrew, To The Point.
Very good morning.
Good morning.
Right, we're going live to Khartoum this morning. We're going to be speaking to somebody who is in Sudan to find out exactly what it's like.
The evacuation finally underway. 4,000 potentially people going to be brought back to Britain. Also, Prince Harry, he's whinging about the press again.
Yeah, and Rishi Sunak has written an article saying he knows what a woman is. Don't miss it.
Unlike the Labour leader.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, nah, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.